Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a video covering the 8 premium tanks that are available for silver during the Cyber Monday sales. Now those sales start at 11 UTC on the Monday and then finish at 10 UTC on the Tuesday. So when the server goes down for the weekly reset, when the new season will come in, that's when the sales end. So it is a one-day event, and there is 8 premium tanks that you can get for silver. So the tier 10s cost you 100 million silver, the tier 8s cost you 50 million silver, and the 2 era 3s will cost you 150 million silver each as well. Now obviously the tanks are pretty expensive, but for the tier 8s and 10s it's no shock because that's the same price they always run. The era 3s, it's the first time they've run era 3s in the silver event, and I think 150 mil is definitely way too expensive. They all are a bit too expensive, but you are going to be, if you do sink 150 million silver into those vehicles, and especially the Osorio, which is just OP for an MBT, they will make you absolute bucket loads of silver back. So it's one of those things. So, yeah, what we're going to do in this video is basically go through all the vehicles, we'll go through the crew and equipment setups, the statistics, and show you a replay in each of the vehicles so that you can get a general gist of how the vehicles handle, just like we've done in other free XP sale type videos as well. I think for whenever the last one was, we did exactly the same setup. That's what we're going to do for this. So it's mini tank reviews that you can skip to the tank that you really want to look at and see what you're going to be possibly purchasing. So if you do like the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, as it really does help out the channel. And yeah, what we're going to do is start here with the T58 Heavy. So actually, let's go through what tanks are available. So there's the T58 Heavy, the T95 FV4201, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go through the statistics and the setup I've got on the Valor, because the T95 FV4201 is actually a meme setup for me, and they're both absolutely identical vehicles. The EBR75 MLE 1954, the Object 780, the WZ111QL, and the Mantis. And in Era 3, you've got the Leclerc T4, and the EET1P2, which is the Osorio. Now, out of all these vehicles, honestly, if you have that much silver lying about, which there's a lot of people out there that do, just like myself, the Osorio is the one. Honestly, it's the one. It's an overpowered MBT. It's good at absolutely everything. It is it is the best MBT in terms of win rate, statistics, everything coming out of Era 3. It's the best one to pick up. It is a fantastic vehicle. In terms of World War II, that's going to be really down to personal preference, because a lot of these vehicles, none of these vehicles are bad. Well, maybe not the EBR75. I don't think this is a very good tank at all. But generally, the other vehicles are just all pretty solid tanks. Probably the best one to pick up is the Mantis, and seeing as this is an absolutely fantastic medium tank, but it was also a premium contract. No, I want to say not long ago, but time is warped in my brain at times, and it might have been a year ago, and I go, oh boy, that wasn't that long ago. It was a year ago. Oof. You know, one of those. But yeah. So the recommendation would always be the Mantis, because 50 million silver, fine. Tier 8 premium that's OP, yeah, absolutely. So yeah. So what we're going to do is start with the T58 Heavy, where we'll go through the stats of it, crew and equipment setup, all that good stuff, and then show you a replay in it. So here's the T58 Heavy, which is a personal favourite of mine. I do enjoy this vehicle a lot, because it's a 3-shot 750 Alpha auto-loading heavy tank, which, in terms of the armour, it performs fairly similarly to the T57 Heavy, where you can get some cheeky ricochets and stuff like that, but generally the armour does tend to get butchered. The gun can be a bit derpy at times, but the 750 Alpha chonks, and it is lovely. When you get those clips going, it is very, very nice for pushing out that damage. Now, it's a more unconventional autoloader compared to others. It's one that you've got to be calm and considered, know where you're placing yourself, because you can't play like a lot of other autoloaders where you just dive in and clip someone out. This thing can clip a lot of vehicles out, but it does it pretty slowly, because the intraclip reload is pretty long. It's more like the Italian autoloaders with the lengthy intraclip reloads. So you've just got to be a bit more calm and considered with it, and know that you can't just YOLO someone and clip them out, because it just doesn't play like that. So with the T58 Heavy, we've got the 35.4 km/h top speed, 12 km/h reverse speed, 810 horsepower engine, which is 13.73 horsepower per ton ratio, which means you generally do get up to 35 km/h top speed. It can be a little bit sluggish at times because the power to weight isn't the best. But you have a 2.16 soft terrain, 1.03 on medium, and 0.94 on firm, which is fairly bog standard. And again, depending on the terrain you're on, it can feel a little bit sluggish, and that's just the general mobility of the vehicle. It's kind of similar to the T57 Heavy in that way, that it does feel that little bit sluggish. 20% internal fire chances on the higher end of fire chances, and again, when you get shot in the back end where the engine is, just like something like the E5, just like the T57 Heavy. A lot of the American tanks in general, if they get shot in the engine block, they do like burning, so you've got to be careful of that. 39.11 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed means it actually does turn pretty quickly on its tracks for a heavy tank, which is definitely very nice for the tank. With a 40.36 degree a second turret rotation speed, again, the turret traverse is pretty damn quick, and it's faster than the hull rotation, which is also nice. You got 500 meters of view range, which is great. You can spot for yourself fantastically in the T58 Heavy, and you don't get outspotted. Well, you get spotted really easily, so some of the really stealthy vehicles will outspot you, but generally you don't get outspotted that easily, and if something does fire at you, you will spot them. You've got a 1.72 accuracy during rotation with a 2.01 accuracy during movement. Now, the accuracy during movement isn't horrific, but it's not good. The accuracy during rotation is abysmal, and that means that the aim circle blooms out massively. You've got a 2.37 second aim time, so you will feel that aim time because the aim circle does become pretty large on this tank. With a 0.33 accuracy at 100 meters, when you're fully aimed, this gun should be fairly accurate, but at times it feels very, very derpy, so do be careful with this gun. Make sure you're fully aimed, make sure you're giving it enough lead, and you will hit your targets and you can get these rounds chunking out. As it does have that 7.5 second intra-clip reload, so it takes 15 seconds from firing the first shot to deal all of the 2,250 clip that this tank has. So, yeah, the 2,250 clip is very, very strong and can clip out a lot of vehicles, but like I say, to do that, it will take you 15 seconds from firing the first shot. You've got an 8 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty flexible on a ridgeline, which is definitely nice for the T58 Heavy. It helps you to poke over a ridgeline and go, hello, blap, pull back. That's very nice for the T58 Heavy. It's not quite 10, naturally, which is amazing, but it's not 6, 5, etc., which is poor. 12 degrees of elevation is a bit of a struggle sometimes, depending on the ridgeline you're on, so do be careful of that. You've got a 31 second reload, which is a bit long, but again, naturally it balances out what is a very, very heavy clip potential, which is 2.9k DPM, but again, you're never really paying attention to the DPM on a autoloader because they're more about the burst damage, but 2.9k DPM for an autoloader is still a lot, and that's because your clip is a very big clip. Penetration is something that you don't really struggle with all that often on T58 Heavy. 276 pen on the standard AP, 370 pen on the premium heat rounds, and 120 penetration on the HE. Now, the HE rounds are actually very, very good, but I don't load them because I just stick to having AP and heat in the tank in case I ever get to a point where I'm low on ammo. And also, I never really want to spend 31 seconds loading the HE, but this could be a very good HE memer if you just wanted to load full HE and go for the memes, because the 120 pen will pen a lot of vehicles that you didn't think you could actually pen in certain plates. But the penetration is amazing. 276 on the standard AP is fantastic. 370 on the heat butchers everything. And you've got a 750 alpha, like I say, 950 on the HE, with 870 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP, 826 on the heat, and 717 on the HE. So do bear in mind that your shell velocity is pretty below average, and that's part of what makes this gun feel derpy. You've got to give a good amount of lead at distance to be able to hit your shots, and it's all about how much lead you give to be able to make sure that this gun is going to work for you, and that's pretty much why this gun does feel so derpy. You've got no bonuses, as you are a tier 10 premium, so do be mindful of that. In terms of the modules, that's where the engine block is in the tank, and like I say, if you get shot in that engine block, a lot of the time this vehicle does get set on fire. That's where the ammo racks are on this vehicle, so it's quite likely to get its ammo rack damaged if it gets shot in this centre part of the tank. And that's where the crew sits in the T58 Heavy. And like I say, in terms of the armour on this vehicle, it's one of those, if you want to shoot at this thing, shoot it in the cheeks here, and that's where you're likely to go through it. You can try and go through the cupola as well, which can get penned, and naturally, as always, you want to try and shoot the lower plate, as that is pretty weak too on Mr. T58 Heavy. That's where you want to shoot, and like I said, the armour on this vehicle can get you the nicest bits of bobs of ricochets, just like the T57 Heavy, but generally, your armour isn't worth that much against a lot of the tier 10s, and they will just go through you, so do be careful of that when you're playing your T58 Heavy, and that's how you take it out if you are facing it. So what do I run in terms of a crew and equipment? So in terms of the crew, we run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Clutch Braking, Expert Gunner, Arm Wrangling, Track Mechanic with Rapid Aim and Clutch Braking to get the track traverse and the turret traverse to be as fast as possible, because it's nice to have that to make the tank feel fairly nimble. Armor Wrangling to reduce the amount of damage coming into the tank by 5%, which can be pretty handy for a heavy tank, and especially for a vehicle like this where you're going to poke, take a shot to dish out 750. That can be pretty nice for that. Expert Gunner to increase the chance of doing module damage by 6%, which for a hefty gun like this, which already has quite high module damage, can lead to some possible Ammarax more often, possibly, which is definitely nice for the T58 Heavy, with the running gun and the snapshot to get the best out of the gun in terms of the accuracy during rotation and movement, so that the aim circle doesn't bloom out too badly, as that is something that could be quite poor on the T58 Heavy. And in terms of equipment, we've got the optics, the gun stabilizer, the GLD, and vents. Vents to make everything about the tank that little bit better, make the accuracy, the aim time, the reload, which is this is the only way to help the reload on the T58 Heavy. So the reload, stuff like that, just make everything about the tank generally better. You could switch that out quite easily for a turbocharger to make the vehicle a little bit faster, but you don't really get much out of the top speed. It's more about extra oomph in the engine. You could run the armor hardening in conjunction with the armor angling to be able to get the damage that you take down by 10%, you know, that sort of thing. It's really down to you and how you want to set up the vehicle. The GLD to get the best aim time on this vehicle as possible, because obviously you can feel the aim time quite a bit with how much the aim circle does bloom out. The gun stabilizer to limit that gun bloom, because like I say, if you don't help it, it is horrific, so we want to help it out as much as we humanly can do. And the optics to get that very good view range of 500 meters, so we can spot for ourselves and get some nice assistance damage depending on the game. But yeah, that's what I run in terms of recruit and equipment on this vehicle. There's plenty of different ways to set up the vehicle. It's always down to you and how you want to be able to play it. But yeah, that's the T58 Heavy. Like I say, it's a personal favourite of mine. It's one that I do very, very much enjoy playing at tier 10, just because it's that sort of unconventional auto-loaded gameplay. It takes a little bit of knowledge of how to get the best out of it, where to position yourself, when to go and when not to. And this gun absolutely slaps, which is something that's also pretty beautiful about the tank. So what I'm going to do now is send you into the replay where you can watch this tank in action, see how it handles, and just see if it's a bit of you or not. So as always, everybody, I will see you in the replays. So here we are in the replays with the T58 Heavy tank. And what we're going to do on this map, which is Kaunas, we're going to push towards the E7 area so that we can try and shoot people as they cross the AB line. Because usually people get spotted as they do cross to try and get up into the A7 area. And if they get spotted out, that means you can try and smash them in the side as they try to get to safety. Which, for something like the T58 Heavy, can be very, very handy because, well, you do absolutely chonk in this vehicle. And it just hits so hard that when you can catch people out and you don't have to be the one taking hits and you can dish out those blows, oh, it can be super, super satisfying indeed for the vehicle. So as we were coming over this way, we actually end up finding a T54. Now, why did we take that shot? That was... Come on, me. That was dreadful. I don't know why we bothered with that shot, but we did need to do that shot as we end up putting a big shot into the T54 there, putting us up to 844 damage. We've got one shell left, and we're just trying to loop around to find a shot into the T54, which we get in for 762, and now we're on the reload. And this is what I mean about the tank, right? It does take a wee bit to load the clip, but to be honest, for how hard we generally hit people for that 2,250 clip, I don't feel that bad reloading for 30 seconds, because yeah, it takes 15 seconds to dish out all 3 shells. But on the whole, with the amount of punishment I can dish out, it's just really, really satisfying when you do manage to get loaded. 29.2 seconds, as you see there, with the food boost. You can just drive around and you have such a big impact because of the alpha. You don't really struggle to pen things. Obviously, you struggle to hit things at times because derpiness. But you don't really struggle to pen things. And you then just drive around the corner, go blap, 675, good night, Mr. Night Stalker. You know, you have that big impact with the clip, and yeah, it does take a while to get it out, but that's what I'm talking about with the vehicle being not your conventional, but it's an unconventional autoloader, just like the Italian Heavy, sort of not Italian Heavies, the Italian TDs, there we go. Just like the Italian TDs, they're unconventional autoloaders. You don't think, oh, I'm an autoloader, I must drive in and absolutely clip everything out. You just do exactly what we've done there, where you pop around the corner, go blamp, pull back, go blap again, and before you know it, you've done 3.8k damage, and that is the power of the T58 Heavy. It's all about catching people out, but knowing and the exact best position to be in, as well as also being able to know that you can fire and get yourself safe. Because just like the T57 Heavy, the moment you become the focus of people's attention, it goes downhill pretty quickly because your armor is very, very troll, but it's not very reliable. So we drive around the corner. Hello, Mr. FV4005. I feel like he's just fired at this heavy tank, but it's one of those moments where I felt like he'd fired, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I just did the weird angling around the corner there to put the shot into the 4005 to finish him off. We're up to 4.7k damage. And that's the reason we came back this way, is when we'd killed the T54, we could have pushed on to try and get people that are on the AB line, but we saw there was quite a few vehicles in the town area that we could go and try and catch out. And since the initial fight had started to happen, and people had been aggressive and pushed to positions that they couldn't get out of, that's where we could punish them. So Mr. 60 TP, we're aiming for that lower plate, put the shot in for 686. He ends up taking hits from the T57 Heavy and the Night Stalker, and we've still got the 2 shells in, which is 1500 damage. So we're just going to hold on to them and wait for someone to possibly drive into a position where we can shoot them. Or we're going to put ourselves in a position where we can also shoot them. So what my thought is to go after the 705, but there's a possibility I might be able to shoot the guys in the middle, like Mr. M48 Patton there. The light tank gets shut down by the T249 Black. The 705 ended up popping out and shooting the TD next to me. The Chieftain and the M48 are in positions where I might actually be able to get shots at them. So the M48 just gets away with it. Lucky boy, lucky boy indeed. But there we go, we can actually get a shot at Mr. Chieftain. So we're just aiming up towards the Chieftain in the hope that he drives forward, because I don't think he realises he's in danger. And there we go, we got 1 shell straight into the side of the Chieftain. The M48 Patton drives out straight in front of us. It's like, thank you, Mr. M48 Patton, don't mind if I do. And we put the shot straight through the side of the M48 Patton there for 6,800 damage. 705 chooses to kill the Night Stalker, as you do, because, well, number 1, kill all Night Stalkers. Number 2, tank this 1 shot, and that gives us the opportunity to be able to get this clip in. And when we've got this clip in, well, we're still near full health. There's nothing this 705A can really, or sorry, 705 can really do against us, because we are going to clip him out. So we drive around the corner, aim for the lower plate. I said we can clip him out, didn't we? I jinxed it. But we're going to put a shot through his lower plate this time. It sets him on fire because, you know, higher caliber gun, meaning it does more module damage. And now we're nearly loaded. We can put the shot into his lower plate to finish him off. What I should have really done there is just let the T57 Heavy kill him, and then I've been able to get an extra shot of damage here into the GW Tiger for 750, pushed us over that 8k mark. But, well, we don't really care about pushing for extra damage. We're just trying to get as much as we can out of this game. And we finished the game with the 7.8k damage, 763 assistance, the 3 kills there for the T58 Heavy, which, like I say, is a tank that I do thoroughly enjoy. This is one of my favourite tier 10s to play. I just enjoy it. I just get along with it. You know, it's one of those vehicles. There's a fish with the Confederate, the high caliber, the 1582 base XP. But yeah, that's the T58 Heavy, which you can get for 100 million silver. So here we are now with the British Tier 10 Premium Heavy Tank, the T95 FV4201. But what we're going to do for this video is go through the Valor T95 FV4201 Chieftain's stats with the setup that I run in the crew and all that sort of stuff. They're identical tanks, just one skinned and one is not. And I've got one set up and the other one is set up for meme shenanigans, because we used to play this vehicle on stream back before 6.0 on Twitch. Full hash. Just full hash memes. Just for the memes of it. Because we ended up getting this thing for free at some point. And then we used to go around using the 140mm of pen and hash rounds, because they are filthy. And you could meme around so hard with those and just go full hash. And we used to see how we could do in games just firing that. But then I had the more serious setup for the Valor. So we're going to go through the Valor, but this is the vehicle that you will actually get for 100 million silver from the Cyber Monday deals. So, with the T95 FV4201 Chieftain, what's it like as a vehicle? Well, it's a very, very good hull-down heavy tank. The problem for this vehicle nowadays is that it's kind of been surpassed by a lot of the vehicles. Back when it first came out, it was amazing, and it was one of the best ones you could get for the British heavies and quite a lot of the tier 10 heavies in general, because it's amazing hull down, which it still is. The gun handling is pretty good. The DPM's a little bit low though, but it used to be special in the fact that you had the 440 Alpha as well for a 120mm gun. Nowadays, it's been surpassed in that most of the other heavy tanks actually have 440 Alpha, because obviously it used to be that this thing had 440 Alpha but slightly lower DPM, for the others having the slightly higher DPM and 400 Alpha. Now, they all have the higher DPM still, but have 440 Alpha, whereas this thing is a bit more left in the past, meaning its DPM is just not that good, and it's got the same Alpha as a lot of them. Does that mean it's a bad tank? No, it's probably just more that the other tanks have been over-tuned, but there you go. So it's still a fantastic heavy tank being hauled down. It's just not quite at the level as quite a few of the other vehicles. It's fantastic hull down. Use the 10 degrees of gun depression. You'll bounce a lot off the turret, and you can keep slapping out the rounds with this 120mm gun. The hull armor's a bit so-so. The mobility is pretty decent as well. But realistically, you could just go and get your tech tree chieftain, because I think the DPM's 2.7k on this vehicle. And if we were to go to the tier 10 British tech tree, we go to the Chieftain, Mr. Chieftain over here. This you can get for free just by grinding the tech tree, and to be honest, it is a far better vehicle these days than the Valor. It used to be a trade-off between the two, you know, they were both about the same decent level, and you chose 440 and a more solid turret, or you chose the slightly better mobility with the better gun handling and the better DPM, right? Nowadays, this is just the far better pick in every way, other than the fact that you can't really side scrape with this vehicle, and you can with the Valor, pretty much. So, because as you can see, this has got 3.3, nearly 3.4k DPM, whereas the Valor's got 2.7. So, yeah. If I'm honest, like I say, if you wanted to, and you were interested in picking up the T95 FV4201, you're still picking up a pretty solid heavy tank at tier 10. But just know that you could just go get the Chieftain for free by grinding the tech tree, and you'll have a better tank, right? But like I say, doesn't mean it's a bad tank in the slightest. So let's go through the statistics of the Valor T95 FV4201. So as you can see, we've got a 46 km/h top speed, a 15 km/h reverse speed, 850 horsepower engine, which is 14.17 horsepower per ton ratio. So the horsepower per ton ratio isn't too bad, and you generally do get up towards that 46 km/h top speed, but it can feel that little bit sluggish, and that's because it's got a 2.4 on soft, 1.25 on medium, and a 0.96 on firm in terms of the resistances, meaning it can feel that little bit sluggish getting to its top speed. It might be something you want to help out with the off-road driving if you wanted to. 15% internal fire chances in the middle of fire chances, and if you get hit by the higher caliber guns, it does like getting set on fire, but it's not too bad against some of the other 120mm guns. 35.72 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed isn't fast, but it's not slow. It's pretty decent hull traverse, meaning it does turn pretty quickly left to right. With a 34.73 degree a second turret traverse, just bear in mind that that is a little bit slower than the tracks, but it's still not too slow in terms of how it turns left to right with the turret. 489 metres of view range is pretty good for the T95 FV4201 Chieftain, meaning it can spot for itself pretty nicely, and especially when you go to those aggressive ridge lines where you can go poke over, use the 10 degrees of gun depression, bounce shots, maybe bait people into shooting at your turret, and therefore they'll give away their positions where you'll be able to spot them with that. You've got a 0.97 accuracy during rotation, which isn't the best, but paired with the 1.57 accuracy during movement, that's really not that bad, and it means the aim circle doesn't bloom out horrifically for the Valor T95 FV4201, and you do have a 2.01 second aim time, which means this tank does aim in pretty quickly as well, which is also pretty good for the vehicle, even if the aim circle doesn't bloom out that much. 10 degrees of gun depression is really flexible though, and it's fantastic for this vehicle to be on a ridgeline with that 10 degrees of gun depression, meaning you can go hull down, only expose the turret really easily depending on the ridgeline, and bounce all the shots while dishing out the 440 alpha rounds from this gun. You've got a 0.34 accuracy at 100 metres, which again is pretty accurate. You're getting onto the accurate end of the scale for the gun, and if you're fully aimed, it is a very nice gun. You've got a 9.76 second reload, which is 2.7k DPM, which, like I say, is pretty low these days for a tier 10 heavy tank with 440 alpha, as it used to be, again, the case that the trade-off was this thing had worse DPM than a lot of the other 400 alpha tanks, but you had the 440 instead, and then you had the impenetrable turret, whereas nowadays there's quite a few things with impenetrable turrets. They have the same alpha as you, and they have over 400, 500, 600 more DPM than you, which is never used to be the case. They never used to have the same alpha, but there you go, that's just, again, tanks being overtuned. You've got 270 penetration on the standard APDS rounds, 322 on the premium APDS rounds, and 140mm of penetration on the HESH rounds. Don't sleep on these HESH rounds for that 530 alpha, because they are very, very good, and they will be able to pen quite a lot of tanks that you don't actually expect to be able to pen in certain situations. So they can be very, very handy. It's why I run the ammo swapper, because that HESH is absolutely fantastic, and anything to try and help the DPM out on this tank by upping your alpha is something that can be handy for the Valor. You got 1,150 meters a second shell velocity on the standard APDS rounds, 1,334 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APDS rounds, and 1,067 meters a second shell velocity on the standard HESH rounds. So the premium APDS rounds are just generally better, which is why a lot of people generally just fire the premium APDS rounds. And that's because it's not the penetration, it's because the velocity is just that much better. It makes the gun handling feel even nicer, and it's generally a very good round to fire on this tank. But 270 pen on the standard APDS rounds with that slightly above average shell velocity are still pretty good, and they will go through most things you're going to face. And naturally, if you load the 322, that's where you'll be able to go through stuff like the Mousers and Type 5 Heavies pretty reliably. And like I say, don't sleep on the Hesh rounds, because they are very, very good on this vehicle. And it is a tier 10 premium, which means it doesn't really have the... it doesn't really have any bonuses anyway. So the modules for the vehicle, that's where the engine block is. Like I say, this vehicle does like getting set on fire by the higher caliber guns if you get shot in that area, so do be careful. That's where the ammo rack is, and generally if you get shot through the drive wheel, tracked and penned through there, through that angle, or through that angle, as you can see, generally the shots are going to enter your ammo rack, and this thing does lose its ammo rack quite often. So do be careful of that in the T95 FV4201, as that is an area that people will be shooting for, and they will hit and damage your ammo rack, so do be careful of that. And that's where the crew sits in the T95 FV4201 as well. And in terms of the armour, like I say, you do have very, very good turret armour, which bounces, it's nigh on impenetrable. It bounces most shots that will face it, which is nice. It does have a cupola on top, which can be penned, but it's a very, very slim shot, and most of the time when people go for it and go through it, it's when they're above you. If they're on the level playing field with you, it's a very difficult shot to hit, and generally they don't tend to hit it that often. The hull armour, the upper plate and lower plate tend to get penned by most vehicles you're going to face at tier 9 and 10. Angles do help, and you can ricochet shots if you're at that sort of angle, but then your side armour is really exposed, so yeah, you do be careful of that. And the vehicle can side scrape, as it has 88mm of side armour, which means this can side scrape very, very effectively, which is something that the Chieftain can't do with its 38mm of side armour. So that's definitely a nice asset for the T95 FV4201 as well. So what do I run in terms of a crew and equipment for this vehicle? Well, I run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Track Mechanic, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Clutch Braking, Rapid Aim, Armour Angling, and Expert Gunner. Expert Gunner to increase the chances of doing module damage by 6%, as that can be a very nice thing, but also reducing the effective distance on our penetration by 25% for the APDS rounds, which, as you can see, we've now knocked it to 251mm of penetration at 500 metres and 291 on the premium, so we have actually made it a lot better than it previously was without the Expert Gunner. And then, in terms of the other skills, Armour Angling to reduce the amount of damage coming to the tank by 5%, always a useful skill for heavy tanks. Rapid Aim and Clutch Braking to make the track traverse and turret traverse better, because, again, it's always nice to make those things better on these kinds of tanks. The Run and Gun and Snapshot to get the accuracy during movement and rotation down as low as possible, so that, again, the aim circle doesn't bloom out too badly. And these three perks, well, we're a fairly brawly heavy tank. We're nice to get the tracks back on faster if we've already burnt the repair kit. And you're generally going to run these on most vehicles in World War II. And then in terms of the equipment, we run the Advanced Loader, the Gun Stabilizer, Optics, and the Loaded Shell Exchanger. So we run the Loaded Shell Exchanger because the Hesh rounds are fantastic. I love using them, so I use that to be able to switch to them all of the time. Now, a lot of people might not get or know how to use those Hesh rounds, so you could definitely switch that out for something like Vents to get a better reload and better everything in general. Armour Hardening to reduce the amount of damage coming into the tank by 5%, in conjunction with Armour Angling to reduce the damage coming into the tank by 10%, or you could run the turbocharger to go faster, get extra oomph in the engine as well. It's really down to you and how you want to kit out the vehicle for that. Optics to be able to get the best view range I can possibly get on this vehicle, with the Gun Stabilizer to get the accuracy during movement and rotation down as low as possible. Again, make that aim circle as small as it can be while turning and moving the tank. And the Advanced Loader to get the best out of the DPM. I say there's plenty of ways you can kit out the vehicle on the Valor, but it's really down to you and how you're going to get the most out of it. But yeah, that's the T95 FV4201 Chieftain. Like I say, it's this version that you can buy for 100 million silver, and it's still a pretty solid tier 10 heavy tank. Just a consistent hull-down heavy, which is what has always been good about the T95 FV4201. It's just one of those cases of a lot of the vehicles that it'll face at tier 10 have generally surpassed it these days because of balance changes, and this thing hasn't really had that. So, as always, I will see you in the replay. So here we are with the T95 FV4201, or, well, we're playing the Valor variant, naturally. Like I said in the garage part, it's because I've got it fully set up, and they're exactly the same tank. They're identical in terms of all the statistics and stuff. It's just that this one's got a skin and the other one doesn't, and it's the unskinned version that you can get for 100 million silver. And yeah, the Valor, it's a very good hull-down tank. It's definitely lacking in the DPM area these days compared to most tanks that are out there, because like I say, it used to be the case that it had 440 alpha, so it had less DPM than the other 400 alphas, but you had the impact of having more damage per shot, whereas now those tanks have all kept their same DPM or higher DPM since they've been buffed. And then also now they've had their alphas buffed up to 440, so the speciality of this vehicle, yeah, kind of drops. But there's quite a few of the 122s as well, like the Chinese 121 or the WZ120, for example, which had higher DPM in general, but their gun handling is really not as good as some of the other new 440 alpha guns, right? And so it has all the negatives of having the higher alpha compared to the others, but the others now have the same alpha, but better guns, better DPM, that sort of thing, and you sit there going, oh, it's a bit of a sad time for those kinds of guns, right? Who knows, in the future they might end up changing it, so now we've got the 440s, that maybe the old 440s, like this vehicle, or like the 121, or the WZ120, end up getting changed to like 470 or 480 or something, like, who knows? We don't know what they're going to do in the future, but yeah, it is what it is. So, I digress. Valor, the T95 FV4201, I decided, screw it. I normally play this game on this map and go to the position where the heavy tank is at A7 and the light tank is at A7, and then kind of get stuck. So I thought, you know what? We're going to be aggressive. We're going to go to these ridge lines, try and spot the people that do sit along the positions at EF890, because we're in a strong hull-down vehicle, because this vehicle is an amazing hull-down vehicle. It's one of the best. We can push over these ridge lines, show only our turret, and then start pushing damage out, because this gun, like I say, is very consistent. In terms of the DPM, yeah, not so great, but in terms of the consistency of the damage it pushes out, fantastic. So we've managed to use the Hesh already in this game. We put a shot into the Waffle Panzer IV, which is why I love the ammo swapper. We tried to use the Hesh there against the Griller, but the shot went a little bit low, and so we ended up hitting the tracks, not the hull, which meant the HE splashed as opposed to just penning. We tried to, again, try and get that HE round into the Griller. It went extremely wide. It was a very, very slim shot that was never going to happen, and so we missed it. Poor choice of shot, really, but there we go. And we're just trying to find some shots into this 279E, which is not going too well, and the 279E is a very, very awkward tank to be able to pen. And if we had 340 heat, it'd be great, but naturally, this vehicle doesn't have the 340 heat. It has APDS rounds, which is going to struggle with normalization, and also we don't have that penetration either with having the 322. But the 322 is enough to go through it, it's just the APDS rounds with normalization and that have more chance of ricocheting, especially depending on the angle that 279E gets himself in. Now, with the attack that we just did on the Griller there, I feel kind of ripped off. I loaded the Hesh round to go through the Griller. We got 530 alpha on those Hesh rounds. We rolled for 433. We rolled for less than my standard alpha. I mean, for all we know, that guy's probably running armor angling, which is reducing our damage by 5% anyway. Who knows? Which is why that perk, same as the armor hardening, should be HP buff. But, well, the armor hardening will turn into a HP buff at some point. But, yeah. It's just annoying because you sit there going, was that just an extreme low roll, or did that guy have something that could reduce my alpha? Who knows? Who knows? But I feel ripped off with that Hesh round because it didn't do the 500 plus that I was expecting. It just went, yeah, you know what? I'm going to hit that guy for 443 or 433, whatever it was. But we do get the roll there with the APDS round into the 279E for 504. So, swings and round. RNG giveth. RNG taketh. So we're going to go attack the TD now. Try and get up behind Mr. Tortoise to finish it off. But in fact, the T92 says, hello. So we got up behind the T95 E6. We put a shot into that guy. The E75 gets shut down by the MXM451. So we're just going to push round to finish off this T95 E6. But we end up taking the hit in the side from the T95 E6 because we overexpose our side armor. And because I was just trying to be as careful as possible, we ended up ricocheting off his upper plate because we hit it in an extreme angle and it bounced, which was just a series of it was fully lemony snicket. It was just a series of unfortunate events that led to that, which, yeah, we trying to be careful. We were trying to not overexpose our tank, which meant we had a really weird angle to be able to shoot at him, which means we ricocheted, and we overexposed our tank anyway, meaning he penned us in the side, because, yeah, we're an idiot. It is what it is. So the GUI gets spotted. The light tank is chasing the GUI. We load the Hesh rounds again. That's why I love running the loaded shell exchanger, because we can just switch to what we need. and we're going to wait for the GUI to drive out sideways on, which he does, and we put the shot in for 489. Hopefully we'll be able to pick up the kill here on this GUI, as the Manticore is chasing him around, and with the Manticore already having fired, and us having much better DPM than a Manticore, there we go, we managed to finish off that GUI. So the 279E is now being flanked. He's got the light tank with me. He's also got the other guys behind him. We've tried and put the premium round into the side of the 279E's turret there, but it didn't quite work out. He's now turned around to deal with the other dudes, so we put a shot into the rear for 432. He's now in a position where he's probably going to get finished off, so we're swiveling now to try and be ready to move off to get after the last couple of tanks on the enemy team, because there is 4 tanks left. There's the 2 heavy tanks. There is 2 heavy tanks left now at G1 and G4, and we're going to use the pretty good mobility here of the T58 FV4201 to try and get somewhere close to these vehicles, because obviously that's the nice thing about the T58 FV4201 is you do have that 46 kilometers an hour top speed, which just gives you that little bit extra. Wow, that went in. Nice. We'll take that. RNG giveth, RNG taketh. But yeah, the nice top speed at 46 means you can try and chase damage in certain games, because there are other heavy tanks. Say if I was in a Super Conqueror, right, which is just as good as this vehicle at being hulled down, I would not get anywhere near these tanks at the end of the game, because at 34 km an hour top speed or whatever it is for the Super Conqueror, we're just that little bit too slow to get there, whereas in the T95 FV4201, that's not really the case. So there's only one vehicle left, which is the Cannonia Jagdpanzer III GST Term. And as we're coming around the corner, we end up getting an outline. And I think I can see him, but we can't quite see him because of the ridgeline. But in fact, it's because he's just going up and down on a ridgeline where I can just about get a shot at him. So I'm trying to get a pixel shot there into the turret with the premium, but it doesn't quite come off. He ends up starting to drive up a ridgeline though, which means if I get myself into a better position, there we go, the shot opens up, we put it in for 380, and he gets finished off by the Object 277. And that's the FV42, the T95 FV4201. We finished with the victory, the 3 kills, 5.1k damage, 30 and 41 assistance. Pretty good game there for the valid T95 FV4201. Like I say, it's just a pretty consistent British Tier 10 heavy tank, which is truly a god while hulled down in exactly how it wants to play. So the next tank on the list is the Soviet Tier 10 Premium Heavy Tank, the Object 780, which is a pretty solid Tier 10 Soviet heavy tank. It's pretty good hull down. The armour on it is really troll. It's one of those armours that is really annoying to play with, and it's really annoying to shoot at as well, because when you play it, a lot of the time you sit there bouncing so many shots that you sit there going, how am I bouncing these shots? And then all of a sudden, the switch flicks and everything pens you. And you sit there going, It's also a bit of a fire hazard, which you've got to be careful of. So it does get set on fire quite often, which can be really frustrating. But generally, it's a very good hull down support heavy, which is exactly where it wants to be. The gun for a Soviet tank is very, very nice. The mobility is very, very good. And as long as you're only exposing the turret armour, that's where it's going to go well. The hull armour can be a bit of a pain, because like I say, the lower plate is such a troll to pen for quite a few vehicles that you'll find that you actually bounce quite a lot off of it. But Tier 9 and 10 Premium tends to just go straight through, and again, if you get shot in this lower plate, you tend to get set on fire, which can be pure pain. You can also be overmatched on the underside of the belly as well, which is quite raised up, so if you're on a slight ridgeline, people can shoot straight underneath you as well, which is something you've got to be careful of. And these cheeks on the side here can be quite susceptible to taking shots when you do try and side scrape and stuff like that as well, which can be pain for the 780. So it's a bit of a troll one to be able to use the armour, and it takes a lot to get the most out of the armour, but the general support of this vehicle, the way that the gun works, the hull down nice capacity of it can be very, very nice. Do be careful of getting shots into this cupola on top though when you are playing it as well, because people who are shooting slightly down on you can go through that cupola. But I do quite like the 780. It is quite a fun tank to play. It's not absolutely incredible, but it's not bad. You know, it's one of those vehicles that you sit there going, it's fairly well balanced. So the statistics for the 780, you've got a 47.25 km an hour top speed, 15.75 km an hour reverse speed, 913.5 horsepower engine, which is 18.34 horsepower per ton ratio. So generally, you get to the top speed pretty easily. It is a very mobile heavy tank, which is nice for the 780. 2.01 on soft, 1.34 on medium, and 1.15 on firm. Again, generally not the worst ground resistance in the universe. Medium is not great, and firm actually isn't that good, but the soft terrain is not too bad. And it will feel sluggish depending on the terrain you're on, but it's still a fairly mobile heavy tank. 9.56 internal fire chance. Does like getting set on fire when you get shot through the lower plate, so do be careful of that, but it hasn't felt like I get set on fire as often since I've had the fire safety training. 45.47 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed means this tank does turn very quickly on its tracks, which is definitely very nice for the Object 780. 34.73 degrees a second on the turret rotation speed, though, is a bit is way slower than the tracks, so do be careful of that with the 780. 501 metres of view range, though, is also something that is absolutely fantastic for this vehicle, meaning unlike quite a few of the other Soviet vehicles that are a bit blind, this tank can spot for itself fantastically, which is also very, very nice for the 780 in that support role. You've got a 0.74 accuracy during rotation with a 1.84 accuracy during movement. So the 0.74 accuracy during rotation is not too bad. The accuracy during movement isn't quite as good, but as a pair, they're really not that bad. And it means the aim circle does bloom out a wee bit, but it's not horrific. And you have a 1.82 second aim time, which means it aims in incredibly quickly as well, which is lovely. The 130mm gun on this tank is absolutely lovely, especially for the Alpha. A lot of the guns that you get on the Soviet and the Chinese heavies that have this Alpha and this caliber tend to be really derpy. This vehicle is not one of those, as you have 0.34 accuracy at 100 meters as well, meaning this gun is pretty accurate and generally hits a lot of the shots RNGs as permitting. 7 degrees of gun depression means it is pretty flexible on a ridgeline. It's not incredibly flexible. It's a very average gun depression, to be fair, as it's not really amazing, but it's not really bad. You know, it's one of those. And because of the profile of the vehicle, the 7 degrees does also feel pretty good on a ridgeline for the 780, helping it be that pretty good hull-down heavy. You've got an 11.53 second reload, which is 2.7k DPM. So again, it's starting to be a bit lacking in terms of the DPM, but naturally, as the Alpha gets higher on tanks, the DPM goes down because that balances it out. And this tank has more DPM than the Valor, which we just talked about, which has 440 Alpha. This thing has 530. So yeah, the DPM is not actually too bad for a 500 plus Alpha tank. 267 penetration on the standard AP, with 311 penetration on the premium APCR, and 65mm penetration on the HE, means the standard pen is good enough to go through most vehicles you're going to face, and if you do struggle with them, you can go through with the APCR, which is, again, pretty nice. Not at the heady heights of some of the 330, 340 penetration on the premiums, but still pretty damn solid. With 65mm penetration on the HE, that can be pretty useful if you pen the lightly armoured vehicles for 640 Alpha, which is great on this gun. You've got 1,130 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP, which is above average, but the premium APCR at 1480 is just standout. That velocity is lovely, and I think I made a video about it a wee while ago about the difference between firing standard and APCR on this vehicle. The gun handling at times feels a little bit wonky when you fire AP, and you feel a bit of derpiness in the gun. As soon as you fire that APCR, that just disappears. That shell velocity is so good, and it is a very, very nice round to use on the 780. With 930 meters a second shell velocity on the HE, do be careful of that, because if you load the HE, you're going to have to give a lot more lead, as it is below average, than the AP and the APCR. And again, you are a tier 10 premium, you don't really have any bonuses. So that's where the modules sit on the vehicle, and this is why it gets set on fire a lot, or it did before I run fire safety training, because the engine block in the front and the engine block in the back, again, if you get shot in the lower plate, it's going to set you on fire. If premium rounds go through the upper plate, which can happen, it's going to set you on fire. If you get shot in the back end where the engine is, you're going to get set on fire, because it's all engine block, and that can be a royal pain for the 780. It's one of the reasons why it is a bit of a tinderbox and why we run fire safety training. That's where the ammo rack on this vehicle is as well, and generally if you get shot in the middle section, that's where it's going to get its ammo rack damage, so do be careful of that. It doesn't tend to get tracked and penned on ammo rack though, which can be quite nice, but if you're sideways on, generally people will shoot you straight in the side underneath the turret, and that is going to damage the ammo rack. And that's where the crew sits for the 780, the three of them. And like I said, with the armor profile on this vehicle, the lower plate and the upper plate are very, very troll. They do tend to bounce quite a lot of shots, and quite a few times you will shoot the lower plate with a normal, say you've got 267 pen, you'll shoot another one in the lower plate and bounce off that lower plate and sit there going, here? And it's because of the weird angling on the lower plate. A lot of rounds will go through it, but you will get some troll bounces off it. Same as the upper plate will bounce quite a bit as well, but as soon as they load that 311, they tend to go straight through this upper lower plate section, which can be a pure pain. But if you are hull down using this turret front, it is very, very good, and it will bounce a lot of shots. You just got to be careful of the cupola on top, as that can be penned on this vehicle, so that can be a bit of an annoying one if it does catch those shots. Generally, it doesn't side scrape that well either because of this cheek, which can be a royal pain. You can try and obviously bait shots off of it, but this cheek does end up taking away what you can do with side scraping and stuff like that. So in terms of accruing equipment on this vehicle, I do run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Track Mechanic, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Clutch Braking, Rapid Aim, Expert Gunner, and Fire Safety Training. Fire Safety Training, because it gets set on fire all the time. And this is a very Soviet heavy tank crew for me, because it gets set on fire all the time, so we want Fire Safety Training to decrease the chance of getting set on fire and how long you are set on fire for. Expert Gunner to increase the increase the chance of doing damage, module damage, that is, by 6%, as well as decreasing the effective range on my penetration. That's one that you could quite easily swap out, though, because I've run that for the memes. You could quite easily swap that out for armor angling, very, very easily indeed. Rapid Aim and Clutch Braking to get the track traverse and turret traverse as good as humanly possible on this vehicle, again, so that we're making it feel that little bit more nimble in terms of its track and turret traverse, and not very lethargic. The Run and Gun and the Snapshot to get the best out of this gun and make it feel really, really nice, and again, accentuate the strength of this vehicle in the fact that the gun is very, very nice on this tank compared to a lot of the Soviet tanks. And then again, those 3 perks we're generally running on quite a few of the heavy tanks, because it's nice to be able to get the tracks back on faster if we've already burnt the repair kit. And in terms of the equipment, I run the Advanced Loader, Gun Stabilizer, Optics, and the Turbocharger. Turbo, because again, this is a mobile support heavy. It's a heavium. You don't want to be brawling head-on with a lot of the heavy tanks too much. You want to be able to use this mobility on this tank to go flanking and spanking with the gun. Optics to be able to get the best view range I can possibly get. It does have very good base view range, so you could definitely think about dropping that if you don't really care about the view range all that much, but it's nice to have 501 meters of view range for overkill to be able to spot for yourself. Gun Stabilizer to get the accuracy during rotation and movement down as low as possible so that we can spot for yourself really easily, with the Advanced Load to get the best out of the DPM. Yet again, you could run a multitude of different things on this vehicle. Loaded Shell Exchanger to switch between the 3 different rounds if you really wanted to. You could run the Armor Hardening instead of the Turbocharger to decrease the amount of damage coming into the tank by that 5% alongside Armor Angling. Again, run Vents to get the best out of the DPM instead of the Turbo. You know, it's really down to you and how you want to play this vehicle and how you want to kit it out. But that's the 780. What I'm going to do now is send you into that replay so you can see it in action. I'll see you there. So here we are with the Object 780. We're on highway, and on highway from this spawn we're on here, what we're going to do is go to the ridge line at DE9, sit there, try and shoot people as they cross into the JK line into the town, and then when we need to, we can go into the town, go win the town, and then come back to defend the base. Because that's what you need to do from our spawn, because genuinely, this spawn is not very good. It's not very good on highway, because we don't get across to AB12 very easily. It tends to be anyone that gets across there dies very quickly, because you can get caught out by anyone if they go under the bridge at E5. You can get caught out, spotted, and then just murdered before you get across. And even if you do get across, you're outnumbered exceptionally easily, like the TD that's currently across there is going to find out. So what we need to do from this spawn is push to this ridge line that we're on here. We hit them hard. Did we? Did we? Oh, he got hit hard. Oh, Lord above. Well, okay. Yeah, great. So, thank you for actually finally penning that pesky little light tank. But I digress. Yes, so what we need to do on highway is come to this position here. Why? Exactly what you're seeing. We can catch out the tanks like the light tank that went across the open. We can try and get shots into them. If people get spotted like we spotted the AVRE there crossing the open and he got absolutely blapped, great. We can knock out tanks as they try and get into the town area. But what we can also do is realise, okay, we now need to go and get into the town, get stuck in and win it. Because once you've won the town, you can then come back to defend your base. Because what you don't really want to be doing that often on our spawn is win the town, which we can do fairly easily. But I think this is the problem with the spawn, right? We can win the town because we spawn over here and we get there quite quickly. But their team also has just as an equal a chance to get into the town and get numbers into the town quite safely to fight and brawl in there. Whereas we can never get to the AB12 area safely and have a fair chance of getting numbers over there without dying, right? I think that's the problem with this spawn, is that each corner is a good battle zone, but we never get the chance to actually get into the battle zone. But I digress again. What we need to do is win the town, and then when we've won the town, what a lot of teams will make the mistake of doing from our spawn is win the town and then try and push the enemy cap. Because if you try and push out the enemy cap to J2 area, you will get farmed by their campy campersons. And there's usually a couple of campy campersons that go and sit at J2, K2 in that little area. you'll get farmed by them, and then you end up leaving your base open, which is generally being attacked by the quite a few people that have pushed across the ABC line from their team, because a lot of their team do tend to go that way as well. So we get up behind the E4, we're angling so that we're not going to drive out directly in front of the heavy tank on our right, which we managed to get the shot in the E4 without taking any hits, which is great. We're just thinking about trying to angle out round the corner to get shots into Mr. E100, but he fires, meaning I know I can drive round and get the shot into his lower plate. E75 finishes him off. So what we're going to do now against the IS-32 and the Huntsman is get into the face of the E100 that's dead, and now try and just use my armor as effectively as possible against the C100 to just start trying to farm the shots in. So the IS-32 ends up shooting our tracks, tracking us only. We're just waiting on the reload to put the shot into his lower plate. 544, that's the thing with this gun. It is pretty satisfying when it gets working, because you do have that very nice alpha at 530. So the Huntsman drives around behind us. We finish him off with the shot. Not quite sure it was the best. I mean, it was kind of probably a good idea in practice for the Huntsman. Or in theory, I should say. It was a good idea in theory for the Huntsman, but in practice, it didn't go very well, because we had people behind us that were easily going to kill him. So we're just trying to side scrape around the corner to get shots into Mr. Tortoise. He bounces, or in fact, he's firing HE. He fired 2 HE rounds at us there. Okay, sure. So he fired 2 HE rounds at us. We put the shot through his cupola, and he got finished off. There's 8 tanks left on the enemy team, and as you can see, it's what's happened. Our team needs to turn around and go back to base, because if you don't go back to base, naturally we're going to get capped out and lose, or they're just going to wrap around. And what might happen is we might have a couple of our people then try and push along the K line, get sniped by all the people camping and die as well, meaning there's no one to defend your base either. So we're going to use the good mobility that the Object 780 has to get ourselves back into a good position to help defend this base. And again, the Object 780 has that really nice top speed, just like the the T95 FV4201. It has that really nice top speed at 47 kilometers an hour, and it does shift pretty quickly to get yourself back into a good defensive location if you need to. So we want to try and cut out the ability for the heavy tank and the medium tank and the Tiger Mouse and the Leopard to be able to attack our dudes over here in these TDs. So I was thinking about going straight over, but there's still got quite a lot left. So I'm thinking there's possibly something that could be defending these two who are on the other side of this ridge line. And in fact, there's a Carnarvon over there. So with the 7 degrees of gun oppression, I just need to use the perfect spot to be able to get the gun down to get rid of the Leopard and the Tiger Mouse. So with the Waffle Panzer IV pulling back around that corner, I knew I was safe to get over and put a shot into the side of the Tiger Mouse and shut that guy down. Now I want to get rid of the Waffle Panzer IV so that we can get rid of the Leopard. So I'm just going to drive around the corner, put the shot through the destructible cover there, and finish off Mr. Waffle Panzer IV. Up to 5.1k damage, 2.4k assistance, 5 vehicles left on the enemy team. The Carnarvon that's at B6, this Leopard who's been cheeky, the E3 that is at E6, and then whatever's left in their base. So we're just trying to find shots into this Leopard, and the Leopard is truly just... He's just like, I stay away from you. We end up hitting the dead wreckers trying to get shot there into the Leopard. It just didn't... Sad times. And rather than let me shoot him, he's just going to sit in front of the Conway, who does end up finishing him off, as we don't quite reload in time there to shut down the Leopard 1. So we're killing the Leopard 1 being dead now. We can get after the E3, who is sideways on. Oh, sod's law. Just as we reload there, the E3 gets shut down. The Panzerjäger and the base gets shut down. Finished the game, we're still with a pretty nice total there for the Object 780. Finished with the victory, 4 kills, 5.1k damage, 2.6k assistance damage. The steel wall, the high caliber with the first class. Nice game there for the Object 780, which, like I say, is a pretty mobile, nice gun, Soviet heavy tank. So here we are with the last of the tier 10s that you can buy for silver. This is the WZ111 Cheil-In, or the QL. It is a 560 alpha version of the WZ111 5A, which you can get from the tech tree. So if you want a flavour of what this tank is like, you can just get the tech tree version for free. And that tank's just as good as this. It just doesn't have the alpha damage that this thing has. So yeah, the QL, it's a pretty solid tier 10 heavy tank. It's got good mobility, again, good hull down potential. The gun hits hard. It's got pretty good DPM as well. And just generally, it's a good all-round heavium of a tank. Now, it's not quite on the power level it was once it came out, because when it came out, before 6.0, it was an incredible tank, and it was just way better than most of the tier 10 heavies, and it was better than the tech tree version as well, but the tech tree version has been buffed since then, and it's now slightly better or just as good as this vehicle. But it's still a very, very good tank, generally. It does have the special flare as well. When you fire and you're in third person, you do see the dragon breath after it's fired as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the QL, pretty solid tank. If you were to pick this up for 100 million silver, you can't go wrong because it is a damn solid tier 10 heavy tank. So let's get into the statistics of the vehicle. So as you can see, we've got 50 km/h top speed, 15 km/h reverse speed, 750 horsepower engine, which is 15 horsepower per ton ratio, which means it generally does get up towards that 45 to 50 km/h area. It has a 2.35 on soft, 1.13 on medium, and a 1.03 on firm. So the ground resistances on soft are poor, but on medium and firm aren't too bad. And like I say, generally you do get towards 45 to 50 km/h on this vehicle. You got a 7.45% internal fire chance, which is really quite low at this point, and that's because of fire safety training. Once again, fire safety training has played quite a big part in this vehicle not getting set on fire, which is definitely lovely. And if you do get set on fire, it gets put out pretty quickly as well. So it's a lot better for that than it ever used to be, because it used to get set on fire all the time, just like a lot of the Chinese vehicles. You got 39.11 degree a second hull rotation speed, which means it does turn pretty quickly from left to right. And with a 35.61 degree a second turret rotation speed, do bear in mind that that is slower than the tracks, but it's still pretty decent in traversing left to right of the turret. 500 meters of view range is again pretty fantastic for the vehicle. It means it can spot for itself really quite nicely. A 0.82 accuracy during rotation is really not too bad. 1.98 accuracy during movement though, or what? Yeah, 1.98 accuracy during movement is not honestly that great. But as a pair, they're not horrendous. But the aim circle does bloom out a wee bit because that accuracy during movement isn't that great. You do have a 2.35 second aim time as well, which is, you start to feel it a little bit on this vehicle, but it's not horrendous because the aim circle isn't horrifically big. And with a 0.37 accuracy at 100 meters, this gun can start to feel a little bit derpy at range. It can just feel like sometimes you just need to hit the lower plate and it just deviates a little bit high and hits the upper plate kind of shots when you're at 300-400 meters. But it's, again, it's not incredibly derpy, it's just getting onto the derpier end of the scale. You got 7 degrees of gun depression, which is, again, just like the 780, and the low profile of the vehicle, of the QL, means you can use ridgelines pretty easily in the QL, but it's not an amazing gun depression vehicle, but it's not a bad gun depression vehicle. 7 degrees is perfectly adequate for the vehicle. You got 11.21 second reload, which is 2.9, nearly 3k DPM for that 560 Alpha. Once again, you're seeing just how low the Valor's DPM is at 2.7. Nearly 3k DPM for 560 Alpha is lovely on the QL, and you've got 250 pen on the standard AP, 340 on the heat rounds, and 65mm of penetration on the HE. 65mm of penetration on the HE is pretty decent for going through some of the artillery and hitting them for 660 Alpha, which is great. 250 is enough to go through a lot of the vehicles you're going to face, but if you do struggle to pen them with 250 AP rounds, you can just load the 340 pen heat rounds, which are utterly beautiful and butcher everything. That's a 560 Alpha on the standard AP and the heat, 660 on the HE is nice, 930 meters a second shell velocity on all 3 rounds is below average in terms of its velocity. It's below the 1000 meters a second average, which means it can feel a little bit derpier just for firing just because of that shell velocity. Just bear in mind that you've got to give a decent amount of lead at distance to be able to hit your targets with that kind of shell velocity. It is a tier 10 premium, so it doesn't really get any bonuses as well. In terms of the modules, that's where the engine block is, and again, when it gets shot in that back end, it did always like to get set on fire, just like a lot of the Chinese vehicles, but the internal fire chance being a lot lower now with the fire safety training, it generally haven't felt that bad in terms of getting set on fire, which has definitely been quite a nice change for it. The ammo racks, yeah, it gets ammo racked a lot. It loses its ammo rack quite a bit, because if you get shot in the lower plate on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, they tend to damage the ammo rack. If you get tracked and penned on either left or right-hand side of the QL, they generally tend to damage your ammo rack. So you've got to be very, very careful of that in your QL, especially getting shot in the back of the turret as well. So the ammo rack is something that does tend to go on this tank. And that's where the crew sits in the WZ-111 QL. And in terms of the armour, like I say, it has a pike nose, which you've got to be careful of, because if you turn slightly to the left or slightly to the right, you do end up unangling this upper plate, which means it can be a lot easier to pen for a fair few of the tier 10 standards, but also a lot of the premium rounds go straight through that upper plate if you're not careful. If you're head on, it's a lot harder to pen, but the lower plate is also not very good, which is where this tank is very good hull down, because the turret front is very, very good, bounces most shots that will face it, unless you get a premium round hit the cupola, but it will take premium rounds to generally go through the cupolas on the QL, so when you're using the full 7 degrees of gun depression, this arm profile is really quite nice. And it also can side scrape as well, but the problem is, it's got 18mm of sidearm, which is great. You can side scrape in this vehicle, but you've got to be really careful not to expose this upper section of the pike nose, as that can also end up being quite easy for people to pen if you're at an angle like that in their firing premium, so do be careful of that in your QL. So in terms of crew and equipment for the QL, I run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Track Mechanic, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Rapid Aim, Clutch Braking, Expert Gunner, and Fire Safety Training. Pretty much the same as my Soviet Heavy tank crew, because it's very useful to run a crew like this on the Chinese Heavies as well, because they do like getting set on fire. Expert Gunner to increase the chance of doing module damage by 6%, especially with having the higher alpha and the more module damage for that higher alpha. That can be quite nice for possibly popping at people's ammo racks. Clutch Braking and Rapid Aim to make the truck traverse and track traverse faster, which can always be nice on quite a lot of vehicles. Run and Gun and Snapshot to get the best out of the gun on this tank, so that the accuracy during movement and rotation is down as low as possible with the gun stabilizer. Track Mechanic, again, because we tend to get a bit brawly, it's nice to get the tracks back on faster if we can, and then these two you're going to run on generally most vehicles you're going to run in World War II. But like I say, you could, if you wanted to drop Expert Gunner, you could run radio jamming to decrease how long you're spotted for by 3 seconds. You could run off-road driving to make the ground resistances better, help you with the top speed. You could also run armor angling, which is also perfectly valid, to decrease the amount of damage coming into the tank by 5%. And that's probably would be my recommendation, is get rid of armor angling for that, or get rid of clutch braking for that as well, because it still does have pretty decent track traverse even without the clutch braking. Really down to you and how you want to kit out the vehicle. And in terms of the equipment, we run the advanced loader, the gun stabilizer, optics, and vents. Vents to generally just make everything about the tank that little bit better, make the DPM better in conjunction with the advanced loader, the accuracy, the aim time, all that good stuff. Optics to be able to get the best view range I can get out of the tank with the 500 meters, because again, I personally like to have the really high view range, so it's nice to have that. And the gun stabilizer to get the best out of the accuracy during movement and rotation, so that the aim circle doesn't bloom out much at all. This vehicle is quite versatile in how you can set it up. You could definitely get rid of the vents again to run the turbocharger to go faster, get the better engine power, just generally make the most out of the mobility. You could run the loaded shell exchanger to switch between the AP, the heat, and the HE wherever you need to. You could also run armor hardening to reduce the amount of damage coming into the tank by 5% in conjunction with the armor angling if you do that as well. If the aim time annoys you, you could run the gun lane drive instead of vents. It's really down to you and how you want to kit out this vehicle, as it is quite versatile in its setups. But that's how I run it. And like I say, the QL is a pretty damn solid tank. So what I'm going to do now is send you into the replay where you can watch this tank in action, see how it handles, and see if it's a bit of you or not. So as always, everybody, I'll see you in that replay. So here we are with the WZ111 QL, and this time we're on Pearl River. And on Pearl River, what I want to try and do is push to K3, because I can go hull down there, shoot across the one line if people do push aggressively, and then I can push aggressively to somewhere like G1, go hull down, shoot people that, and try and spot people that will sit at E1, E2, because that's always a good push play to try and catch out their snipers, and if you've got enough snipers, you can also get quite a bit of assistance damage. And the WZ111 QL, or the 5A, is both two tanks that are very mobile heavy tanks. It's more of a heavium than a true heavy, right? Where the upper plate can bounce you a good amount, but if people catch you out at a weird angle with the pike nose, shells can go through the upper plate. The lower plate is pure garbage, it gets penned by everything, but the turret armor is also very, very nice. But it does have very good mobility with the top speed at 50 kilometers an hour. You've got the pretty good power to weight. It's only really the ground resistances that make this thing feel that little bit more sluggish. So you can get to some very aggressive positions that a lot of mediums would probably be going to, that quite a few heavy tanks can't. So it's always a nice thing to be able to do in something like the WZ111 QL. So we go for a blind fire off the bat. Again, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and that is generally a route that a lot of people will go down along that one line to get into this area. So it's always something that I do try and blind fire, because occasionally you do get a cheeky shot for free into someone as they come around that corner unspotted. And they sit there going, huh? Hacker! There's a hacker! I wasn't spotted, I've not fired! How did they hit me? It's just pure blind firing, mate. Just pure blind firing. So we get a shot on the move into the 114 SP2 for 554 damage. We're now going to get ourselves safe around this corner so those TDs can't get shots at us, while also trying to get shots into the TVP 50/51. But that guy got evaporated by an AVRE, and then we bounce a 114 SP2 there. We bounce a heat round as well for something that didn't get spotted. That's interesting. That's their camo working for them right there. And I decided, screw it, you know, screw the TD and the whatever was shooting heat at me. I want to ram this Grilla 15. We end up getting tracked, but not penned by the 114 SP2 again. And all I want to do is ram this Grilla. I just decided, screw it. I want memes. It's what I live for. It's what I want. We ram him for 334. Just waiting on the reload. Thankfully, he shoots us in a panic straight into our turret front, which bounces, and we finish off the Grilla. I just went for pure memes, and that's it's pretty much the way that this game is going to go. We're just going to do some exceptionally aggressive stuff just for the lols, and somehow we're going to get away with it. But the QL can let you get away with it, same as the WZ111-5A, because you've got the nice mobility, you've got good enough armour that can get you out of trouble. You've got a nice hard-hitting gun, and there's the gun flare I was talking about earlier on, where the dragon fire. And the QL is just a pretty solid tank for all that sort of stuff. Yes, it can go badly, because the armour, again, can suffer from premium rounds and, you know, pike nose problems and stuff like that. But you've got the good view range, you've got the good mobility, you've got a pretty solid gun that's occasionally just a bit derpy. You've got great turret armour. It's just a pretty round, solid vehicle, you know? Not absolutely infallible, but it's good enough that if you play it well enough, you will have great times. As we're already up to 3.1k damage with 3.2k assistance, because we did push that aggressively that we spotted all their TDs. They took some big hits, and then we've also managed to dish out damage to those guys too. So it's been going well, right? And I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to keep this aggression going. We've already put a shot into the 4202. We're just going to go around and try and get rid of these TDs. So we drive around, put the shot into the turret front of the 114 SP2. He ended up flinching his shot into the ridgeline because I stopped just short, and he gets shut down by the IS-7. Now, we did bounce what is that AMX M445 over there off of our upper plate, and we're up to 5.1k blocked, which is a great time for us in the QL. We've got the 4202 in front of us, and that AMX M454 just having overwatch over this position. So with the 4202 now getting shut down and the MX M454 pulling back, I decide, okay, we're going to go push over and try and get under the gun line of the heavy tank and the medium tank at D6. We might take a hit from the M454, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. And we knew that we could get to this position here and might get away with it, but I knew crossing this gap is where I was most likely to take a hit from this M454, and we do. We actually hit his turret on the roof there on the move, but we didn't pen it. And sadly, my guys that have tried to make the same cross have been driving out in front of these guys in front of us, and thus they have been dying. So we've loaded the heat rounds, because that way we can get through the lower plate of the VK4502B. As we shoot him through the drive wheel there, heat rounds. Heat rounds just won't pen and track that. I might have actually penned that with AP, but yeah, sad times. But since he's just penned us, you know what? We're going to make sure this heat round goes through to his lower plate. And this is the moment where the gun has decided that working is difficult. And so we actually put the shot straight underneath him. There's a Cobra in front of us, so we put the shot through his side armor there. He actually got a shot with HE into us there. And it's sitting there going, are they going to cap? There's two guys next to the cap. How have they not been reset yet? Thankfully, though, they do finally get there. We're going to make sure with the heat round this time. We hit him for 616. And the Cobra ends up tracking us with the HE round. He doesn't pen us with any of them, but that tracking shot ended up putting us on sideways on in front of Mr. VK4502B, which means we were guaranteed to take the hit there. We're now at one shot for the 4502B, who's coming after us. We're pulling back as fast as humanly possible, and thankfully, he snapped his shot. He didn't aim it, he snapped his shot, he hit the upper plate and ricocheted once again, and we finish him off with the heat round. Now we've got an AMX M454 coming around on our left-hand side. We pull back to get ourselves safe, and then I decide, okay, he's just going to keep moving. Let's get a shot. Oh, no, he didn't keep moving. Oh, that's kind of awkward. I thought that guy was going to keep moving to get himself towards the rock so he'd get away from the 4005, but he actually just stopped and shot us, which is what I didn't expect. Bad mistake there, but we finished with 5.5k damage, 3.2k assistance, the first class, the sniper, with 1626 base XP. Really great game there for the WZ111QL, which is honestly a really solid Chinese tier 10 heavy tank. And yeah, it's worth it. So here we are with the first of the tier 8s that you can buy for 50 million silver, and it is the Panhard EBR 75 MLE 1954. Now, this tank is nice with the double tap autoloader. The double tap autoloader on most vehicles, if you have that kind of autoloader, is very, very nice, and it can rack up damage pretty quickly. Now, this tank is a true pain because it's got good camo, which is glorious. The mobility, it's got good top speed, but it's a wheelie boy, and the wheels are just exceptionally awkward to use. The way that they maneuver the wheelie boys on console is just horrible, and they don't particularly maneuver very well. There's so many times you can end up driving yourself off cliffs really easily just because of weirdness with the terrain and stuff like that with the wheels. Yeah, the way this is not for the faint-hearted. That's what I'm trying to put out. This tank is not for the faint-hearted. But the real pain is that while you have good camo and you have a nice double tap autoloader, you have terrible view range. You have absolutely dreadful view range, which means that you get outspotted by pretty much everything. Because I think it's got 330 meters of view range base, which is awful. Awful, awful, awful. That's like tier 2, tier 3 view range. It's dreadful. You get outspotted by every other light tank. If you end up in tier 9 and 10 games, every tank outspots you really easily. Doesn't matter that you've got a good camo. You just don't spot them. They spot you. And it's quite a big target, so it's fairly easy to hit. The only thing for the EBR that goes for it is the fact that occasionally rubber is the strongest armor in the game, and your wheels will keep you safe. Always bring your rubber, people, because it will keep you safe. So, yeah, it's just not a great tank, honestly. I say it can be satisfying when you do really well with it, but the fact is it's really frustrating because you feel like, I want to go scouting, I want to go active scouting, like but you just can't do it. Which is why we run the binoculars, because then I can get into a bush with the good camo, stay unspotted, and then get the best view range I can get, which is only 423 meters of view range, which is still absolutely dreadful view range. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this tank. I don't think it's that good. If you played it like a support medium, where you can keep double tapping things, it can be pretty decent, but it's just awkward with the driving as well. Like I say, it's not the faint-hearted. Would I recommend it for most people? Probably not. The super unis of you out there will probably be able to get the most out of this vehicle, and like I can, you can have some pretty good games, but it's still super frustrating to play. So, with the EBR75, it's got a 60 km/h top speed, and it's got the meme of going 60 km/h backwards as well. Now, if you press left on the D-pad, you go into the drive mode, which then makes the tank a little bit easier going in a straight line. It doesn't turn left or right quite as easily, but it goes at 75 km/h, which means it goes really, really quick. But like I say, it doesn't turn left or right just as easily. If you go into this mode, it's fighting mode. It can have the better gun handling, but you go at 60 km/h and it traverses a lot easier. But the thing is, it's also still a pain to get the mobility to work properly on this vehicle because the amount of times it just slides is also really frustrating. As you do have a 525 horsepower engine, which is 35 horsepower per ton ratio, it's an incredibly mobile vehicle. Ground resistances don't really hold you back whatsoever. 20% internal fire chances on the high end of fire chances, and it does get set on fire quite often as well, which is also annoying. 60 degrees a second on the wheel traverse is very, very quick. And it's part of the reason why this vehicle also does end up spin out a lot. And that's one of the frustrations with the tank. It's just how fast it goes. It spins out so often. It's really annoying, honestly. And that's part of what makes this tank really frustrating. 265 meters of still concealment, same as on the move. Naturally, as it's a light tank, it's very, very good. But again, it doesn't have any view range at 423. 423 is the best you'll get with binoculars. If we were to knock the binoculars off, the best view range we've got while we're on the move is 388, which is absolutely atrocious. And again, pretty much every tank outspots you really easily because you've got to get really close to spot them. And by that point, your camo means absolutely very little. And if you go and sit in a bush and get your binocs up, you're still not got very good view range, which means you still struggle to spot anything crossing or anything like that from aggressive bushes, which is just really frustrating. So yeah, the view range is not great. The camo is pretty good though. 72.26 degrees a second on the turret rotation speed is pretty quick, and it does turn faster than the tracks. Well, sorry, but faster than the wheels. It's not really tracks, is it? Faster than the wheels, which is very nice. 0.96 accuracy during rotation with a 1.71 accuracy during movement as a pair. Again, the accuracy during rotation is not the best. 1.71 accuracy during movement is getting towards bad, but it's still not bad as a pair. And it means the aim circle does bloom out a fair bit, but you've got a 1.13 second aim time, which is one of the best aim times in the game. That aim time is absolutely incredible, which is why you don't have to really worry about the gun stabilizer that much in this tank, because even if the aim circle does bloom out, you can just aim in if you stop really, really quickly, which is definitely beautiful for the tank. You've got 0.36 accuracy at 100 meters as well, which means this gun is getting onto the derpier end of the scale, but it's still fairly accurate. or fairly decent. It's not even that accurate, but it's decent, which means you'll hit most of the shots when you are fully aimed. 8 degrees of gun depression is also pretty flexible for the tank. It does have 12 degrees of elevation, which is a very oscillating turret problem. It struggles to look up, but it doesn't really struggle to look down, which is decent for the EBR, and it's pretty good on the ridgeline for that. 8.92 second reload is really quick, considering you've got a double tap autoloader. It takes 1.5 seconds from firing the first shot to dish out the damage, and it reloads that clip at 8.92 seconds, so it reloads very, very fast. It's got 2014 DPM, which isn't the best DPM, but again, autoloaders, and it's all about burst damage. And that's the strength of the vehicle, is just how much damage it can push out pretty quickly, because it can do damage very, very quickly, this vehicle. As you have a 180 penetration on the standard APCR rounds, 220 on the premium heat rounds, and 75mm penetration on the HE. Now, the HE is very good for 260 Alpha against light tanks, and going and brawling against all the light tanks, it can be very, very handy. 220 heat pen is good for going against quite a few of the vehicles at tier 8 that are more heavily armoured, same as some of the tanks at tier 9. But in the more heavily armoured vehicles at tier 9 and 10, you really do struggle with the 220 heat pen even, and 180 really does struggle to go through quite a few of those vehicles. So the penetration can be a bit lacking, but that's a general light tank and tier 8 problem. 1300 meters a second shell velocity on that standard APCR round is fantastic. 850 on the heat and HE does mean it's a lot slower than the APCR, so bear that in mind when you load the APCR or the HE. Sorry, the heat rounds or the HE, it's slower than the APCR. And as it is a tier 8 premium, it does have a 150% silver bonus, which means it can make decent silver, but depending on the matchup, you might end up firing quite a bit of heat rounds. But yeah, like I say, the tank is just a bit of a struggle, honestly. It's a bit of a struggle. Most people will probably struggle with it, and it can be a royal pain. But I suppose for 50 million silver, when you're buying things with the in-game currency that you can just earn for free by playing the game, it might be worth picking up as opposed to buying it for gold, right? You know what I mean? It might be one of those tanks that you've hesitated, gone, you know what, it doesn't look very good. I'm not going to pay the 6, 7, 8,000 gold, whatever it costs to pick it up. But then you go, oh, I've got 70 million silver. You know what? I might just pick it up because I have the silver. That might be the best way to get it, because you're basically getting it for free at that point. It's just time. But yeah, it's a royal pain in all that sort of stuff. But in terms of the modules, I digress. In terms of the modules, that's where the engine block is for the vehicle. Doesn't tend to get its engine damaged that often in my experience, but that's where it can get shot to damage the engine. That's where the ammo racks are on the vehicle. Again, ammo racks don't tend to get damaged that often in this vehicle unless they do shoot you in the back of the turret. And that's where the crew sits in the EBR. In terms of the armor, you're a light tank. You've got no armor, generally, except for the best armor in the game, which is rubber. Because if things hit these wheels, there's so many times you can shoot the wheels of the EBR and no damage will come to the tank. You'll just break a wheel, which is quite funny at times. Really annoying when you shoot at it, but it's quite funny when you play it. Especially when you have a Death Star shoot you in with AP and it just breaks a wheel. And you sit there going, okay. You know, it's one of those. So, in terms of a crew and equipment for the tank, I do run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Camouflage Expertise, Green Thumb, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Radio Jamming, Comms Expert, Expert Gunner. Expert Gunner just for increasing the module damage by 6%, as well as the 25% decrease to the effect that distance has on the shell penetration, because the APCR has massive drop-off over distance, and I'm trying to decrease that as much as possible, because it is awful at firing at distance with APCR, so that's why we're running with the Expert Gunner. Comms Expert to increase how long things are spotted for, so it's always nice to be able to keep things lit up for longer, so you get more chance of doing the assistance damage. Radio Jamming to decrease the amount of time spotted by 3 seconds as well, which is always handy for a light tank. These two to just get the accuracy during movement and rotation down as low as possible, especially since we're not going to be running a gun stabilizer. It's nice to be able to do that. Green Thumb and Camouflage Expertise to keep the camo down as low as possible and make it better in a bush, so if I do go sit in a bush and set up the binos, it's harder to spot me. And then these two we're going to run on most vehicles in World War II. And the thing to note, by the way, is with this vehicle, don't run Track Mechanic, because Track Mechanic doesn't work for repairing the wheels, because they are wheels. You want to run Wheel Mechanic if that's something you want to make better. But no point, really. You've got a repair kit, which often will be back in time for you to be able to repair the wheels. And in terms of the equipment, are on the optics, the improved camo, the vents, and the binos. Binos, again, because the view range on this vehicle, it's just utterly dreadful. It's utterly dreadful. So I run binos so that when I run into a bush and I sit still, I can set up the binos, get the 423 meters of view range, which is still not very good, but it's better than the 388 that we had, and that way I can try and assist my team by scouting a little bit if I'm in a really aggressive bush where I've managed to get there because my camo is good. Vents to make everything about the tank better. Again, making the view range as good as humanly possible with the optics, which is making everything about the view range as high as possible. And then the improved camo to get the best out of the concealment while we're on the move or stationary. Because that's the one thing with this vehicle is a lot of the time, because of the view range being poor, you're going to be doing some running and gunning. You're going to be getting as close as humanly possible. So you want to have the best camo while moving as well as still. So that's why we run the improved camo over the camo net. But yeah, that's the EBR-75. Like I say, it's not the best tank in the universe. It's a tank that I would probably recommend that most people not bother with because of its really unwieldy handling while driving. In terms of the damage output, like I say, it's very, very good, but it's a very, very frustrating scout because while you have good camo, you've got pretty good mobility as long as you can make the wheels work in terms of movement. The view range is really not very good, and that can be a royal pain for this vehicle. So what I'm going to do now is send you into the replay where you can watch this tank in action and just see how it handles and see if it's a bit of you or not. So as always, everybody, I'll see you in the replay. So here we are with the EBR MLE 1954 on this map, which is Comorin. Bit of an awkward map for the vehicle because it's a bit small, but it's actually probably a decent map for it as well because it means the engagements are fairly close range, and it also means that having the lower view range doesn't quite matter as much. So we're just trying to maneuver ourselves into a position where we maybe can get some shots into the tanks as they cross, like the M41 90mm there, which we tried to get the shot in, and you can see how fast this gun does get aimed in. It is very, very quick to get the shots down range, because as you can see, you just aimed in very, very fast. We try and get 2 shots into the KV3, but we get 1 shot in and miss the other. The M41 90mm is in a position that maybe I can get a shot into him, so I'm just being as cautious as possible, waiting for him to possibly drive into a position where I can get a shot into him, but I decide, okay, he's not going to drive into that, but let's try and maneuver it into a better position to get shots into him. We bounced 1. We actually ricocheted a shot off the light tank there. Great times. But we do get a shot through the side of his turret. I'm just trying to be a pest as much as possible to get shots into this guy, but we start getting detected here. So I decide, okay, you know what? We're going to drive around and try and pester this IS-3. We get 1 shot that pens, 1 shot that does track damage only. Again, with being that support vehicle, I'm trying to help where I can because I have the damage capacity. This vehicle does damage very, very quickly, which is lovely. It may be very, very awkward to be able to drive. As you can see, it's a real pain with trying to turn and stuff like that when you are stationary. But with how fast the damage goes out, how fast it aims in, you can rack it up before you've even blinked. And that is definitely a very big strength for the EBR-75 MLE 1954. So once again, the IS-3 is driven out to try and get shots into my TD. We put 2 shots into him there, puts him down to a 1 shot for the equalizer, and then we take a big hit. The Grim Root was sat in the bush, unspotted, put a big shell straight through us there, putting us down to a 1 shot for a couple of the vehicles in this matchup. Definitely into a 1 shot now for the Grim Root. But I decided, okay, I can't sit there anymore. I'm going to go and help my team once again. I know there's something possibly in the corner at ABC0. So what I'm trying to do is get behind this building here, keep myself safe until I've got unspotted, and then I can maneuver into a better position where I should be able to shoot the things that the medium tank or the TD end up spotting. Which is a bit of an unusual one for the EBR-75 because it's a lot of the time you end up spending times going, yeah, I can't go spotting because everything's going to outspot me and just blow me up, whereas the medium tanks and the TDs have a better chance of actually scouting than I do, which is a sad time. We are a very good active scout because we've got the good mobility, but because of the lower view range, we really struggle to spot things, and they really do outspot us really, really easily, and it's just, yeah, sad time. It's definitely a big frustration when playing this vehicle. So we managed to get a shot there into the Panther 88. The tank that was in the corner at A0 has been shut down, and I decided, okay, you know what? Once we've got these shots into the SU-101, if he gets back behind cover, I'm going to use my mobility to go and get under the gun line of those guys, and if they want to try and shoot me, they've got to come over the ridge line, which then put them in a vulnerable position for my team to be able to shut them down. But I see the Piggy and I go, okay, it's Piggy time. We're loading the HE, 75mm pen, should be fine. Oh! Okay, the brass hammer acts him. Sure thing. We're up to 2.2k damage with 1886 assistance damage. We did spot a couple of the TDs as we came over for the artillery, so I decided, okay, I'm going to go after him. But we get spotted by the Grim Root, and we really had to drop in very, very quickly there to just not try to get blown up. We now go back, so we're facing forwards, although it doesn't really matter that much with the EBR-75 because you can go backwards as fast as you can go forwards. But we go over, so we go over forwards because naturally it's easier to drive it forwards than it is backwards for the brain. And we end up finding the Iron Rain who's fired at someone. We've spotted him up. Not really picking up any assistance damage though, even though we spotted him. Funky one, but there we go. We're spotting the other TDs though, and the Iron Rain ends up getting shut down, which feeds us a bit more assistance. We know there's the 2 tanks at DE1, so what I'm trying to do is light them up for my team, but also trying to not be too aggressive so that I just drive in front of an Astron Rex, which can kill me in one shot. And at this point in time, I don't really want to get shut down, so we're just trying to keep our distance a bit, keep them lit, keep the Panther 88 and stuff lit up as well, because that should feed us assistance damage, but I'm trying to just not stop moving, because if I stop moving here, I'm probably going to die. So the Astron Rex doesn't get a shot into us. He's actually going for the guy next to us. He fires at that dude. I try and get shot into the lower plate, but bounce, and it looks like this guy might try and come after us. So I'm going to use the good ability of the EBR-75 Emily 1954 to drive backwards as fast as I can go forwards, and that way it kept the building between me and the Astron Rex and got us away from him. So I get 2 shots there into the Stirrer Mill to finish him off for our second kill of the game, and I decide at this point, okay, 2.7k damage, 2.3k assistance, let's just go and drive after the Panther 88 and the TD. Thankfully, the SU-101 ends up missing his shell, and this is where we can use the good mobility of the vehicle, because it is very, very good at going around people, just like that dude, and he ends up getting shut down by the T58, just leaving the Astron Rex, which we get the shot into the back of to finish him off. And like I say, this tank is a really, really good damage dealer. It's just that in the majority of the games, it's a really bad scout, which is super frustrating. But we finished with the 4 kills, 2.9k damage, 2.3k assist, the Ace Tanker, the Confederate Medal, with the 1825 base XP. A really nice game there for the EBR-75, which, yeah, it's just not the best tank in the universe. So now we're on to the final tank at Tier 8, and the last tank of World War II that you can purchase for silver, 50 million silver, for what is an absolutely amazing Tier 8 premium medium tank. And that is the Mantis, which a lot of people already have because it was a premium contract, so you could get this thing for free. But it is a solid little Tier 8 premium medium tank. It's probably on the overpowered side. I mean, in terms of statistics, it's on the overpowered side in terms of win rate and damage output and all that sort of stuff at Tier 8 for medium tanks. But it is very, very good. Why? Because the turret armor is absolutely troll. You can actually bounce so many shots off of this turret. It's unbelievable when you shoot at it. The hull armor is not very good, but generally it gets penned really easily because it's a light tank chassis and it can get set on fire, but the turret armor is what is the troll thing because it's so low profile. A lot of the time when you shoot at this thing, you will be shooting at the turret. The damage output with the main gun is very, very good. It puts that damage really quickly. You've got fantastic camo. You've got good gun handling. Like I said, the reload on the gun is pretty good as well. It puts out the 4-shot autoloader very quickly, as well as having the good mobility with the good camo and the good view range. It can play as a light tank really easily. It can also play as a medium tank very easily. It's that pseudo-scout kind of gameplay, similar to a Baraskite, and it is very, very good at what it does. And for 50 million silver, if you have that as a free premium tank to pick up with, you know, just your hard-earned time, essentially, it's very good and very worth it. So with the Mantis, we've got a 63 km/h top speed, 20 km/h reverse speed, 850 horsepower engine, is 33.33 horsepower per ton ratio, which means you get to the top speed very, very easily. Ground resistances are amazing. You don't struggle with that whatsoever. 12% internal fire chances it's on the low end of fire chances, but it does like getting set on fire where you get shot through the engine block, so do be careful with the Mantis for that. 46 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed means it does turn on its tracks very, very quickly. With a 39.63 degree a second turret rotation speed, that is slower than the tracks, so do bear that in mind, but it does still turn the turret pretty quickly. 286 meters of steel concealment is pretty good for the vehicle, and it means it can be a stealthy medium tank. With 301 meters of on-the-move concealment, because we're running the low-noise exhaust, that's still pretty good camo for an on-the-move medium tank, especially in this day and age. 489 meters of view range, again, is very good for a Tier 8 medium tank, meaning you can spot for yourself really well in the Mantis. with a 1.79 accuracy during rotation and a 2.5 accuracy during movement. Now, as a pair, that is not very good at all. It means the aim circle does become rather large on the Mantis, meaning you do have to wait for the aim time. But you have a 2.01 second aim time, which means you do aim in pretty quickly anyway, and it doesn't feel that bad because of how fast it does get to aim in. 0.35 accuracy is in the middle of the accuracies as well. Generally, that's the point where below 0.35 is starting to get more accurate, but above 0.35 is starting to feel more and more derpy. 0.35 is still pretty decent accuracy. It's just in that middle ground. 8 degrees of gun depression means that you are very flexible on the ridgeline, which is absolutely lovely for the Mantis. Again, it means you can only really expose the turret armor, which can bounce shots left, right, and center at times just because of angles. But you've got 9 degrees of elevation, which is a very oscillating turret problem in the fact that it does struggle to look up, and depending on the ridgeline you're on, it can make it very, very awkward. You've got 25.41 second reload on this 4-shot auto-loading gun. It takes 6 seconds from firing the first shot to deal all 4 shots. So the 25 seconds is pretty good, to be fair, for this kind of 4-shot auto-loader. Can feel a little bit long at times, but you do have the camo and the mobility to play flank and spank mobility kind of gameplay very, very easily, where you end up dropping the clip and then run away. And you get unspotted really quickly because you've got good camo, and then you can go and reposition. 1834 DPM. Again, you don't really pay attention to DPM that often for autoloaders because it's about the burst damage and not raw DPM. You got 210 pen on the standard AP, which is below average in terms of the general penetration on the standard, but you've got 280 penetration on the premium heat rounds, which is enough to go through most tanks you're going to face. It's only the super heavies at tier 10 that you do struggle with that 280. And 0.5mm of penetration on the HE, which I never really take. They do have 320 alpha, but there's never really an occasion where you find the use for using that HE round. 914 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP is below average, and you do have to give a decent amount of lead at distance to be able to hit your targets with that AP velocity. But 1,143 meters a second shell velocity on the heat rounds is actually faster than the AP, so you've got faster firing heat rounds, which is a little bit odd, but there we go. The velocity is quite nice on those heat rounds, it's not too bad. 914 on the HE is the same as the AP, but like I say, you don't generally take the HE that often in this vehicle. And you do have a 150% silver bonus, which means, again, it's a premium tank. It's on the lower end of bonuses for tier 8, but it still makes pretty decent silver. So in terms of the modules for the tank, that's where the engine block is. And like I say, this thing does quite like getting set on fire, especially if HE or Hesh pens it. Because if it gets shot through that lower section on the left-hand side, it generally tends to get set on fire because you go through the engine block in the front and the back. So do be careful of that. That's where the ammo rack is for the vehicle. Tend to get your ammo rack damaged a little bit if you get tracked and penned through the right-hand side. Doesn't quite happen as much if you get penned through the left-hand side. And that's where the crew sits in the Mantis. That looks a very uncomfortable position for that dude in the middle. Wow! That poor dude, he's really squished. Well, okay then. But there we go. That's the modules. In terms of the armor, like I say, it's not really got much armor because, well, it's a light tank, medium tank hybrid. But 40mm on the upper plate on the side armor means it gets overmatched by 121mm caliber guns and higher. So, yeah, if you've got those kind of guns, you can overmatch the side and the front of the vehicle. But the turret armor, while it not actually being that good, has angles. And these angles on this turret mean that you do bounce quite a lot of shots that you don't feel like you probably should have bounced, which makes it a very troll thing to shoot at. And a lot of the times you'll hit this, you'll hit it at an extreme angle where it just auto-ricochets and bounces, which can be pretty annoying when you're playing against it. In terms of a crew and equipment for the vehicle, I do run Born Leader, Situational Awareness, Camouflage Expertise, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Green Thumb, Radio Jamming, Comms Expert with Expert Gunner. Expert Gunner increases the chance of damaging enemy modules by 6% while decreasing the effective distance on my penetration. Can be very nice for this kind of tank, especially an autoloader where you're firing in quick succession. And increasing the chance of doing module damage with that quick succession of rounds can be quite good. Comms Expert and Radio Jamming, so that we're getting unspotted faster by 3 seconds, while also keeping things lit up for 3 seconds extra. Again, can help in the scouting capacity of playing this thing like a pseudo-scout. Run and Gun and Snapshot, in conjunction with the gun stabilizer, to get the accuracy during movement and rotation down as low as possible, so it doesn't bloom out in terms of the aim circle that badly. With Camouflage Expertise and Green Thumb, to get the camo as good as possible, because again, the camo is such a strong asset for this vehicle, you want to help it out if you can. And then these two you run on pretty much every vehicle in World War II. And then in terms of the equipment, we run the improved camo, gun stabilizer, optics, and low noise exhaust. The improved concealment and the low noise exhaust to get the camo down to that 286 meters of still concealment, while also getting the on the move concealment down as close as possible to the still concealment, because then that's nice for what is a medium tank. So then you're getting closer to that light tank type of gameplay, because naturally light tanks do have the ability to have the still concealment the same as their on the move concealment. Gun stabilizer, again, keeping that accuracy during movement rotation down as low as possible so that the gun handling is pretty usable, with the optics to have that very good view range at 489. Now, if you wanted to, you could drop the low noise exhaust and run something like the flash hider instead, where you get yourself, with the good camo this thing does have, into a good position, and then sit behind bushes and fire, and you will really they will really struggle to spot you with the flash hider. But yeah, I would still stick with the low noise exhaust. But yeah, that's the Mantis. It is a very, very good tier 8 premium medium tank. It will do you very, very well if you decide to pick this tank up, and it is just, yeah, it is absolutely solid. So what I'm going to do now is send you into the replay where you can watch this tank in action and just see if it's a bit of you or not. So as always, everybody, I'll see you in that replay. So here we are on this map, which is Cliff in the Mantis, and what I want to do in the Mantis is go to the middle area at EF2. I can use the great mobility this vehicle has with that 63 kilometers an hour to get there really easily, and then I can try and get up into E3 and catch people out as they cross up onto the BC 567 area, because with the good view range we have at 489, the good camo we have at 286, it should be quite difficult for us to get spotted. We should be able to spot the people who are crossing, and then we can put out the damage really, really quickly with this pretty damn solid auto loader. So as you can see, we've got the mobility. We get in really easily before any of their team manage to get down the 1-2. We get into the position we want to be in now, where we can try and spot them as they cross. We find the E65's Villing, put the shot into his lower plate, and this is where we can just push out our damage very, very quickly. We can just get all of the shots into this guy's lower plate. Sadly, we bounced that last shot, or we get a shot straight through into his tracks, but no penetration. But we did nearly 700 damage. And with the T44 now driving after our 112, I was just keeping an eye out on what is going off below us. But we have so many TDs that I don't really have to worry about that too much. What I want to do is get rid of this filling, because if I can get rid of this filling, that would be fine. If I load the premium, I can go through his upper plate, but I didn't really want to load the premium. I just stuck with the AP. So we put a shot through the lower plate there. He goes, hello, I can shoot you. Put a second one in. He hits us once, and I think, did he just double barrel? No, he didn't double barrel. He ended up firing a single shot. So he fired a second single shot, taking us down 2 hits. But we did put the shot through his weak cheek armor there as he turned sideways. We're up to 1456 damage. The Zvilling gets shut down by the LTTB, and naturally, my controller died, because it always picks the best time to die. Which, to be fair, if we're honest, that was probably the best time to die, right? That was the best time for the controller to die, because if we died midway through putting the clip into the Zvilling, we'd have lost a lot more than the near 600 HP we did end up losing to him. So there's still 10 tanks left on the enemy team. There's a couple of tanks that are pushing out the GH line. What I want to do is try and spot their cap area, though, because you never know if we find the artillery. And in fact, we end up finding the Canonier Jagdpanzer 105 and the M4043. We're going to do everything we can to try and get all of the rest of the shots into that M4043. We do end up tracking him in place, and he gets finished off by the 112. So, with their team pushing out of the GHJ line, what I'm going to do is use the mobility of this vehicle to go to a position that you've seen me do in a replay not too long ago, but on fractured lands. And now we're on the proper map, which is Cliff. We're going to use this position here to poke over, use the gun depression that this vehicle has with that 8 degrees of gun depression, and show only the turret armor, and then be able to keep poking out and dropping clips where we need to. So we've got the Kampfpanzer 07RH caught out in the open. He insta-snaps us, by the way. Like, come on, thanks for that. But we managed to get a whole clip into him there to put him down to a possible one-shot, and we can pull back behind this rock, get ourselves safe, wait for the reload, and then we can go for more shots into people like the STRV-81. As their team pushes across that open area along the GHJ line, this is a perfect place to be able to counter them. Now, we did get unlucky with the Kampfpanzer just going, lol, I'll hit you on the move, because, haha, why not? But now we've got the STRV 81 exactly where we want them. We put them down to a one-shot, and we finish them off there for our first kill of this game. We're up to 4,182 damage with the 239 assistance damage. And again, there's still the 7 tanks left alive. We know where 3 of them are because they're currently spotted. There's the TD85. And before I decide to move off and go somewhere else to attack someone else, I'm just waiting for the reload so that I'm ready to go the moment I find something I can join and shoot them. So we are loaded now, and we're going to use the ability to try and cut off the tanks as they go across the 8-9 line, because I feel like they might try and come back after our heavy tank. And in fact, we found the ISM as well that's pushed out from behind, and we just couldn't quite find the shot into his side as he drove out sideways on. But I know a place where I might be able to actually get shots into his side, and that is climbing the ridge lines on our left. If we climb the actual cliff, we might be able to get into a position where we can get shots in. But we do get shots there into the rear of the stockade, picking up our second kill of this game, putting us up to 4.5k damage. Can only Jagdpanzer 105 has died somewhere, so I assume he jumped off a cliff. The 2 medium tanks are getting swarmed now by our tanks climbing the hill, so let's try and get some shots into this ISM. But just as we get there, we end up having a poor driving moment where we slip down the cliff and we couldn't get a shot into the rear of that stock ISM, which is such a sad time. Just one tank left. It's the Kampfpanzer 07RH from earlier. He gets shut down by the 112. We finished the game with a pretty decent total there for the Mantis. We finished with the epic victory. 2 kills, 4.5k damage, 1661 base XP, which is a really nice game there for the Mantis, which is an absolutely solid vehicle and well worth picking up for 50 million silver. Really is. So now we're on to the first of the Era 3s that you could pick up for silver, and obviously these cost 150 million silver, and that is the Leclerc T4 Terminator, which is a pretty damn solid 140mm MBT, because it's got pretty decent turret armor, although you've got to be careful about them shooting the flat section where that block is, because if people fire premium, they can go through that. That can be a royal pain for the vehicle, but it can be pretty good when it's hulled down. The 140mm gun is fairly consistent. It hits most of its shots, and the penetration is fantastic. Just like every other MBT in Era 3, the mobility is fantastic. The lower plate gets penned quite easily, but the upper plate can bounce quite a few shots. And like I say, it's a pretty generic MBT in the fact that it's good at everything. The 140mm gun hits hard, as well as having the good penetration, and it's always a pretty solid pickup. But obviously, a lot of people have this from one of the previous seasons, so it's really, yeah, one of those things that you're probably quite used to coming against and seeing in general battles. And it is a pretty good tank. So with the Leclerc T4, you have a 74.76 km/h top speed, 33.6 km/h reverse speed, 1575 horsepower engine, which is 27.44 horsepower per ton ratio, which means you absolutely fly to the top speed. The mobility is absolutely fantastic on this vehicle. You don't really struggle with that, as the ground resistances are also great. And even though 1.22 on medium isn't that great, you generally don't feel the terrain resistances on this vehicle that much at all. 6.21% internal fire chance is really quite low in terms of the fire chance, and it was one of those things that it did get set on fire occasionally, which did annoy me, so I run fire safety training, which means that it just generally never gets set on fire anymore. You've got 41.28 degrees a second hull rotation speed, which means it does turn pretty quickly on its tracks, and 47.48 degrees a second on the turret rotation speed is really quick in terms of that turret traverse, and that is very, very nice for the Leclerc T4. And the general feeling of this tank is not that lethargic. It's not lethargic at all. It's pretty nimble, and the turret rotation and the hull rotation help in that. 601 meters of view range means it can spot for itself really nicely in Era 3. 0.74 accuracy during rotation with a 1.57 accuracy during movement is really not that bad either. It's actually not as good as a lot of guns in Era 3, and for the Era 3, that's actually not that great. But on the whole, it means the aim circle doesn't bloom out that badly. You have a 1.97 second aim time, which means it aims in really quickly anyway. 0.29 accuracy at 100 meters is fairly accurate. Again, nowhere near as accurate as quite a lot of the guns in Era 3, but still pretty accurate. 8 degrees of gun depression is flexible. It's really nice on a ridgeline, which can be good for the Leclerc T4, and it helps you to go just exposed out of the turret while dishing out rounds with this 140mm gun. A 9.47 second reload is 4.4k DPM, which is decent DPM in Era 3. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's decent DPM in Era 3, especially for a 140mm gun. 848mm of penetration on the standard AP FSDS, and 320 on the premium. Oh, so it's not even premium. It's not got a premium round. The 848 penetration on the standard AP FSDS is pretty great, and it goes through most tanks. 320 on the HE can be pretty usable as well. And you'll be surprised about how many vehicles you can pen with that if you catch them in the right section of the side. Most of the tanks you'll be able to pen in the rear with that 320 as well, upping your alpha to that 870 alpha. You've got 700 alpha on the standard AP FSDS as well, which is pretty normal for a 140mm gun. And you've got 2,050 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP FSDS. The HE rounds go to 1,350 meters a second shell velocity, so do be careful of that. That is that little bit slower than the AP FSDS, but the AP FSDS velocity is just utterly insanely good. And that means you don't have to give that much lead at distance to be able to even hit your targets, even at 500-600 meters. So yeah, that's good for the Leclerc T4. You got 160% silver bonus as well, which means this thing makes absolute bank, especially since it doesn't have a premium round, and its standard round generally pens most of the time when it hits the right spot, or it doesn't even have to hit the right spot at times. 848 means it goes through a lot of plates, so you do make absolute bank in terms of silver on this Leclerc T4, which is definitely delightful. In terms of the modules, that's where the engine blocks are. It does generally like to get its engine damaged, and which is why it generally liked getting set on fire, which is why I've run fire safety training. That's where the ammo rack is on this vehicle, and generally if you get shot through the track on the left-hand side, you tend to get ammo racked and tracked, so do be careful of that. But if you get shot on this right-hand side, it's not too bad. And that's where the crew sits in the Leclerc T4. And in terms of the armour, like I say, it generally is, if people are firing premium, armour in Cold War is weird because of spaced armour and stuff like that. If people are firing premium, that block there that's 570mm thick, people that fire these 650 plus rounds, which there's a lot of tanks in Era 3 that have that, they can just go through this block here. So you've got to be very, very careful of that in your Leclerc T4. They can also go through the viewport here as well. The lower plate is really easy to pen, so you do have to be careful of that. This is where I really do wish we had an interactive armor viewer, where if I pointed and clicked at this spot here, it tells you exactly what pen you need to go through it. Same as clicking on there. But generally, if you're shooting this thing, go through that section there with the high pen rounds. You can go through this little block here, but you've got to be careful because there's multiple layers of spaced armor in it. Or go through the lower plate. And that's where you'll pen the Leclerc T4. In terms of a crew and equipment for this vehicle, I do run Born Leader, Run and Gun, Snapshot, Track Mechanic, Expert Gunner, Rapid Aim, Clutch Braking, Armour Angling, and Fire Safety Training. Fire Safety Training, like I say, because I did keep getting set on fire on this tank, and it's nice to be able to just not get set on fire, and also reduce how long I'm on fire for. Armour Angling to reduce the amount of damage coming into the tank by 5%. Clutch Braking to make the track traverse and the turret traverse better with Rapid Aim, because it's just nice to feel that little bit more nimble. Expert Gunner to increase the chance of doing module damage by 6%. It's always lovely for this vehicle to have that, as, you know, you've got high module damage having that higher alpha. So more chance of setting people on fire, ammo racks, that sort of thing. Track Mechanic, because we do tend to be quite brawly in this vehicle, so it's nice to be able to get the tracks back on faster. With the Run and Gun and Snapshot, to be able to get the gun to be as good as humanly possible, where, you know, the accuracy during movement and rotation doesn't make the aim circle bloom out that badly. With Born Leaders to make everything about the vehicle just that little bit better. And in terms of the equipment, I run the Advanced Loader, the Vents, the Gun Stabilizer, and the Turbocharger. Turbo to go that little bit faster in this vehicle and have that better horsepower per ton ratio, which is nice for the Leclerc T4, and it makes it feel really mobile. Gun Stabilizer, because we have to help it get the accuracy during movement and rotation down as low as possible, because if you don't, you struggle to keep up with some of the other Era 3s that have fantastic accuracy during movement and rotation. Vents to get the best reload and everything else about the tank generally better in conjunction with the Advanced Loader. But you could definitely drop the Vents quite easily for the loaded shell exchangers to load APFSDS or HE. You could run the Armour Hardening to be able to decrease the amount of damage coming to the tank, and they make it 10% in conjunction with the Armour Angling. You could run the Gun Lane Drive if you feel like the aim time's a little bit too bad, but again, you don't really want to do that because it's already pretty good. You could even run the Spore Liner to reduce the amount of module damage coming into the tank by 80 GMs. It's really down to you and how you want to kit out this vehicle. It's how you're going to get the most out of the tank. But yeah, that's the Leclerc T4. That's a pretty solid Era 3 MBT. It's pretty good at most things, just like a lot of the MBTs are. It's solid silver in it. It's just an absolutely solid vehicle. So what I'm going to do now is send you into the replays where you can watch this tank in action and just see if it's a bit of you or not. So as always, everybody, I'll see you in the replays. So here we are in the replays with the Leclerc T4, and we're on this map, which is Safe Haven. On the Safe Haven, I've got two options of where I could go, and it really depends on my team in Era 3. But at the minute, we've got 4 people that haven't even loaded in. But yeah, it depends on where my team goes, because I could go this way into the middle area and have a good brawl in the middle, and if we've got enough team with us, that will go pretty well. But also what could happen is a lot of my team go to the HJK line, we don't have enough people over here, and a lot of their team come here, and we just get overwhelmed very, very quickly. So I'm just getting across as fast as I humanly can do, which is good for the Leclerc because we are really mobile. We get the shot on the move into the Moderna, which again can happen quite a lot of the time because this gun is really, really solid. Put the shot into the rear of the Moderna there, who just drives out sideways on in front of us, which we're always going to take. We were just looking over our head there to make sure there's nothing coming up behind us, and we poke out, put the shot towards the Moderna, and that one misses. I'm not quite sure where that one went, but sure. Now we're nearly loaded again, we drive out, get the shot into the side of the Moderna, who's decided he doesn't want to keep trading with us there. Put ourselves up 2.1k damage, hopefully we'll be able to pick up the kill once we're loaded, which we drive out, finish off the Moderna there for our first kill of the game. Got to be careful of that BMP3 because that guy could fire an ATGM at us, and that would not be a good time, but he's actually got himself around the corner. But it looks like he might just drive straight out in front of us, which... Okay, Mr. BMP3, don't mind if I do. And we put the shot through the drive wheel of that dude, tracking him in place, hopefully get that same tracking shot in, which, again, we get, which, if one of my team decides to shoot the BMP3, we should hopefully get a nice bit of assistance damage. 2 seconds out, hoping to get the kill here, but in fact, the Thumper ends up shutting them down. So, the MBT-70 drives out just enough there to get the track and pen through his drive wheel. We get slapped by an ATGM from something that's up there. I can't quite see what it was, but I decided to just pop a blind fire into the bush. And just as we do that, a Challenger 1 comes over. Why a Charlie 1 came over at this exact moment, I'm not quite sure what the Charlie 1 is actually doing, because... this is how to lose all of your hit points in the blink of an eye, as we don't even take a penetration from this guy and we finish him off. Not quite sure what that Challenger 1 was doing. I just think he probably wanted to go back to the garage. He thought, you know what, I've made my garage in my customizable garage nice and pretty, you know. I just need to go back to it and go stare at it. And so we fulfilled his dream. We fulfilled his dream. So I know there's an ATGM slinger somewhere over there in the bushes. I'm just trying to bait it. It fires... that, with the speed of that ATGM, it was in a dats. We get one shot, though, into him as we saw the little dish spinning in the bush. And thankfully, he didn't actually pen us with that. So we're going to go help the SDRV-122A against this TKX. Because, well, we just need to help our teammate. Oh, the shot went high and ricocheted. We had his side there. That's a really unfortunate RNGesus moment, but there we go. Just going to aim for his lower plate. And again, we have no real problem penning this guy because we just have that very good penetration on the Leclerc T4 of 848, and it does absolutely butcher positions on tanks, and you can get some very, very good penetrations in some spots that a lot of other vehicles just can't because we have that great penetration that this tank has. So I was looking at possible turret ring shots here, but in fact the dude ends up pulling back enough to let me get a shot into the side of the TKX, and we finish him off. We're up to 3 kills with 7.6k damage. Went for the track and pen there into the 640, but the shot went a little bit wide and went to the left, which just hit the outside track and no pen. The 640 comes charging round. We put the shot into his side, which actually sets him on fire. The AMX-40 is having a world of a time with the machine gun. Hopefully we get the kill here on the 640, which we do for that 9.5k damage with the 4th kill. We know another MBT is driven in front of us, so we're just trying to find them through the smoke. It's an Osorio. Again, going for that overmatch there into the side of the Osorio because we can overmatch his side and pen it. Drive past him because I'm getting ready to go after the rest of their team. But I thought he might blow up before we actually got the chance to get the shot in, and obviously, naturally, just as we fire, he blows up because sod's law. But we finished the game there with a really nice total for the Leclerc T4. We finished with the 4 kills, the epic victory, 10,270 damage, 1568 base XP, with the 300,000 silver and the first class. Really nice game there for the Leclerc T4, which is, again, it's a pretty solid pickup. It's just a really solid Era 3 MBT. So here we are with the last tank of the video. Well done to you if you're still here, or hi to you if you've just skipped to the Osorio so you can see what the Osorio is like. We're with the Osorio, 150 million silver for this vehicle. Yeah, this tank is just bonkers. It's a fantastic MBT. It's definitely overpowered. Statistically, everything about it is amazing. Gun handling on it is incredible. It's got one of the best DPMs in Era 3. It's got amazing mobility. The armor works way better than you could ever think it was going to work. Penetration, it doesn't really struggle for. Accuracy, like I say, with the gun handling stuff is incredible. It's just an absolutely all-round amazing tank. It makes absolute bank in terms of silver. And to be honest, while obviously having a crew in it makes it feel great, the replay you're going to see is actually with only 3 skills. Yeah, 3 skills. It's literally all I had on the tank. I think it was Born Leader, Armor Angling, and Expert Gunner. I think that was all I had on the vehicle. Because it just didn't... I never ever felt like I really needed a really good crew. Because you don't have to take any gun handling. Nothing to do with gun handling whatsoever. Because the gun handling is just that good. The DPM is amazing. This tank is just utterly, utterly insane. And the one thing I'm going to say to you is, if you want to take this thing out, shoot it to the right and the left-hand side of the gun with 600 plus pen. Because that's how you pen it. You pen it here and here. Other than that, trying to pen the lower plate is frustrating. You just don't really pen the lower plate. You can overmatch and pen the side as well, which can be something. But generally, yeah, it's quite a really frustrating tank to play against because it munches you in terms of its DPM and its ferocious gun handling and everything. It can absolutely trash you before you even realise what's happened. So with the Osorio, you've got a 73.5 km/h top speed, 34.65 km/h reverse speed, 1,155 horsepower engine, is 26.38 horsepower per ton ratio. So mobility, absolutely fantastic, doesn't struggle with that. Ground resistances don't hold it back. 6.21% internal fire chance, again, just lowering the fire chance so we don't really get set on fire that often, because again, if it got shot in the back end, it did like burning, so it's nice to be able to reduce that chance. We've got 47.8 degree a second hull rotation speed, so the tracks do turn very quickly on this tank. 47.48 degree a second turret rotation speed, again, is actually pretty quick as well for the turret traverse, and as a pair, it makes this tank feel very, very nimble. 606 meters of view range means this tank can spot for itself really quite nicely as well, which is great for the Osorio. Means you don't really get outspotted, you can spot your targets and get assistance damage with that. You've got a 0.63 accuracy during rotation with a 0.84 accuracy during movement, and that's without any help whatsoever to the gun, which is absolutely amazing as a pair. And when this tank turns its turret, when it's on the move, the aim circle just doesn't bloom out. It's non-existent. The aim circle bloom is non-existent on this vehicle, and the little bit that it does, you've got a 1.97 second aim time, which means it's aimed in incredibly quickly anyway. And you've got a 0.16 accuracy at 100 meters, which means it's pinpoint accurate on the move or stationary. The accuracy is absolutely incredible. Like I said, the gun is just phenomenal on this vehicle. It's one of the best guns in Era 3. You got 8 degrees of gun depression on this vehicle, which is great for the vehicle. Again, hull down, using only the turret, means it's very, very flexible on a ridgeline. You've got a 5.13 second reload, which is one of the best DPMs in Era 3 at 6.4k DPM, which is just utterly phenomenal in Era 3. And again, it out DPMs most vehicles really easily. And since you've got the really troll armor, as well as the good mobility, just like every other MBT, as well as the super accurate gun, as a whole combination that makes this tank absolutely bonkers. 633mm of penetration on the standard APF SDS, 700mm of penetration on the premium APF SDS, and 150mm of penetration on the HE. I don't really need the premium APF SDS, I can pen everything I need to pen with the 633, so I don't take any, just to maximise my silver earnings. And then the 150mm of pen on the HE, again, you can pen quite a few vehicles in the rear, but generally I don't use it for that. I use it for splashing things like my low, because you've got that 690 alpha, which means you can splash them for about 300, 350 alpha, which can be quite nice if you hit them in the right spot. You got 1790 meters a second shell velocity on the standard and premium APF SDS, which means the velocity is very, very nice indeed. And 1100 meters a second shell velocity on the HE means that it's a lot slower than the APF SDS, so do bear that in mind and do adjust for that if you do load the HE and fire at distance. And it does have a 165% silver bonus as well, which means this is a very, very, very good silver earner. It makes very good silver. And it's just, an absolutely incredible Era 3 MBT, quite honestly, because that's just what this vehicle is. So, in terms of the modules, that's where the engine block is for the tank. generally gets shot in the back end. In that back section there, it does like getting the engine knocked out. That's where the ammo racks are. Again, they're pretty small. If it's shot in the back of the turret, yeah, likely to damage the ammo rack. But generally, unless you get penned and tracked through that left-hand side drive wheel, you don't really get the ammo rack damaged that often. And that's where the crew sits in the Osorio. And like I say, in terms of the armor, it's one of those that it doesn't feel like it works as well as it should do. It's got 370mm on that lower plate, but does it have a plate behind it? Yes, it does, and that's why it feels so weird, because there's a 100mm plate behind the 370 plate, and it's spaced, which means there's some weird calculations that go on that makes that lower plate really, really strong, even against your own 700 pen APFS DS rounds. So you don't really want to shoot at the lower plate. What you want to do is shoot the turret armor, because as you can see with the turret armor, we have a plate here that's 370mm thick. And then behind it, if we go find, if there's anything actually behind it, it's got that there, which is 45mm of thickness. And that's about it. So if you're shooting it to the left and right of the gun, I was a bit wrong earlier. If you're shooting it to the left and right of the gun through that section there, and that section there, that's where you're likely to be able to pen this Osorio with 633 penetration, because you can go through your own turret through that section there. So do aim just to the left and the right of the gun, and that's how you'll easily pen this thing. But the thing is, if you've got less than 600 pen in Era 3, which there's quite a few vehicles that do, that's where it starts to struggle. You actually start to struggle going through the turret front with that as well. But that's where you can overmatch the side armor, because if you see with the side armor, it is, if we go find it, 30mm thick. It's 30mm thick, which means if it's at an angle like this and you shoot the drive wheel at this kind of angle, aiming in towards the tank, you can track and overmatch the side armor and pen it that way as well on either side. So that's an asset as well. So that's some ways that you can overcome the armor of the Osorio. So in terms of a crew and equipment for this tank, I do run Born Leader, clutch braking, armor angling, track mechanic, expert gunner, rapid aim, dynamic driving, supply conservation, and fire safety training. Fire safety training to be able to keep the chance of getting set on fire lower, as well as putting out the fires quicker. Supply conservation to be able to get my consumables back faster. Dynamic driving, because I'm exceptionally aggressive in this vehicle, and sometimes it's a meme to go ramming things, and reducing the amount of damage coming into the tank can be quite nice, as well as increasing the amount of ram damage you're doing. Rapid aim to be able to make the turret traverse faster, same as the clutch braking to make the track traverse faster. Expert gunner to increase the chance of doing module damage by 6%, and because we're firing quite quickly and we've got that high DPM, it's nice to be able to do that. Armor angling to reduce the amount of damage coming to the tank by 5%, which again is nice for limiting the amount of damage we are taking. With Born Leader, just to make everything about the vehicle better, and since we are so aggressive in the Osorio, it's nice to be able to get the tracks back on faster too. And in terms of the equipment, I run the advanced loader, vents, armor hardening, and the turbo. Turbo to get the 73 km/h top speed, and to feel exceptionally mobile. The armor hardening with armor angling to reduce the amount of damage coming to the tank by 10%. Vents to increase the general DPM and everything about the vehicle. And the advanced loader to get the best out of that DPM. If you wanted to, you could drop the vents, and you could run something like the loaded shell exchanger if you do run 3 different types of ammo. You could run the spall liner in conjunction with the dynamic driving to increase or to decrease the amount of damage you take from ramming as well. It's really down to you and how you want to kit out the vehicle, but there's not that many options for the Osorio, because you don't need a GLD, because your aim time is already good. You don't need a gun stabilizer. Your accuracy during rotation and movement is already absolutely amazing, so you don't need it. I only take 2 shells, and to be honest, it reloads that fast. I don't really need the loaded shell exchanger. Reinforced internals could be quite handy for, not getting ammo racks or set on fire as well. Maybe missile warning system as well, for keeping things lit up for longer, as well as, being able to see missiles incoming, possibly. But there's loads of stuff like, you don't need any of this, you don't really need that, you don't need that, you don't really need that either, don't need that, you don't need that, or that, or that. Well, you could take the toolbox if you wanted to, but it's a meme. You could take the grousers for better hull rotation speed, really, but yeah, there's very little you can actually take on this area that would make a massive difference. It's just that good of a vehicle that the general stats mean that, yeah, you're making some little bits and bobs better, but generally it's minor bits noticeable because the stats are already so low. So yeah, that's the Osorio. It's an absolutely bonkers MBT. It's amazing at everything. what we're going to do now is show you the replay where you can watch this tank in action and just see how it handles. So I will see you in the replay. So, we're with the Osorio here on Severogorsk. Like I say, this vehicle is just, it's a bonkers vehicle in Era 3. The best MBT by a long shot in the era, because you've got that best DPM, that best gun handling, that great mobility, the really solid armor as well. It just is a jack of all trades, and it is a master of quite a few things. It's one of those tanks that is just, yeah, I mean, one of those that you sit there going, the balancing on this vehicle is, they just got it wrong. They just got it wrong. And it is really strong. And it's just the tank that is definitely worth absolutely picking up. And in this replay, like I say, I've only got a 3-skill crew. We're literally running a 3-skill crew in this game because it doesn't bother me, because I feel like this tank is just that good. It doesn't even need a pretty good crew to do well, you know? It's one of those tanks. So, we've come to this flank in the Osorio. We've managed to get 2 shots off already for 1,092, and that's just the way that this tank rolls. It racks up damage so quickly because it has that ferocious DPM that not many vehicles have. So, we're going to go up behind the 2 MBTs on our right, try and pick up the kill on the 292, but in fact the Object 640 Black Eagle just went, yes, I shall take the shells. Sure, so we put a shot into him. The Type 85 2M drives out sideways on, so we're just going to make him get punished for that. Keep him tracked, because we can perma-track people really easily in this vehicle. We're up to 2.6k damage. And again, we're going for that track and pen there on the other Osorio, but, well, it doesn't quite work out that way, as we ended up not tracking him, but we did pen him. And instead of going after the Osorio, we're going to go get rid of Mr. AMX-40. And it's like, my friend, you go join my team. We put a shot into the rear of the MX-40 as we finish him off for our first kill, but we've realised what's happened is what happens on Era 3 quite often. Our whole team's pushed this way, their whole team has pushed towards our cap, and we can't really go and focus on the guys at G3. We need to get back to defend our cap area, because otherwise we're just going to lose to cap, and we don't want that. And that's just, well, that's just the way that Era 3 games go, because it's Wolfpack Central, and yeah, Wolfpack Central leads to this, where if one Wolfpack goes one way, Wolfpack goes the other, they tend to end up in a capping situation. So we get a shot on the move there into the DATS, just wait for the reload to finish him off, and we get rid of that, because I didn't really want to take a big supersonic ATGM into the side there if I decided to ignore him going up the cap. And once again, with 3 people even in the cap, I knew I had the time, all the time in the world, to get back there and defend it. So we need to start decapping. So we get a shot there into the track of the K1. Didn't need to pen him, just needs to damage his track there to reset the cap. Going for the lower plate shot of the 640 to reset the cap, and we bounced, because lol. But we get the track and pen this time. The AMX-32 gets penned, and well, we don't have to worry about the cap anymore, because it's getting reset constantly. Put a shot into the 640, which set him fire and damaged him. We get a shot into the K1, and this is just the chaotic ferociousness of this gun, because it fires that fast that we can just do this, that we can just keep the damage rolling non-stop. And because I've got such good armor as well, I don't care about driving and sitting in front of people. We can just sit there and go, well, you will bounce your shots. Unfortunately, we don't get the shot into the lower plate of that K1 there, and, well, yeah, as Era 3 games go, we end up capping, and we finish the game with the epic victory there for the Osorio in the fast and furious game that it was. 3 kills, 10,069 damage, 1969 assistance damage, fair bit of block, 330,000 silver for that 1420 base XP. Really nice game there for the Osorio, which is absolutely fantastic tank, honestly, to pick up. But that's it for the video. Well done to you if you managed to watch it all. I doubt it. Well done to you if you just skipped to the tank that you really want to see. That's the Osorio. It's well worth picking up. That's all the tanks you can get for Cyber Monday. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
A great success!